Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the D in WhatIf, with another fanfiction. This is the movie of what if Deku turned villain after All Might broke his dream. All credits for this video go to their respective authors, so please support the real author. Check out the link in the description for more details. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. You can't be a hero, not without a quirk, All Might had told Izuku. It's okay to dream, but you need to be more realistic. Izuku was sad, scared, and infuriated by what All Might had told him, and Izuku's mental health deteriorated like glass shattering, which left him to be silent. He didn't speak that often unless he was talked to, or he needed to talk to someone. He barely ate any food, and he didn't get any food from the school cafeteria. He barely slept. Inko had noticed this and grew even more worried for Izuku. She started to stress eat even more, and Izuku had noticed that. He felt miserable. But then again, how could he not be miserable? Especially since his dreams were shattered by his idol. It's been a week since the sludge villain incident. And was Izuku sitting down, looking at his desk blankly, yet he still heard everything the teacher said. Now, that will be all today, the teacher said. Izuku packed away his school notebooks as did all the other students. You all are dismissed. Izuku was beginning to leave before he felt a hand get placed on his shoulder. He knew it was familiar based off the bone structure of the palm and the way it gripped his shoulder. He turned his head and looked at his childhood bully, Katsuki Bakugo. Boy Deku, Bakugo said, waving off the students that were waiting for him so they could hang out. They left before Bakugo glared at Izuku. What the hell are you doing? What do you mean? Izuku asked. You've been acting on Deku-like, Bakugo said, and whenever that happens, his hand started heating up. I normally have to beat the crap out of you to make you act normal. Izuku closed his eyes and turned to face Bakugo, and raised his arms, ready to embrace his pain. Bakugo raised an eyebrow, before he hit Izuku in the face with an explosion. He proceeded to beat the crap out of Izuku, but he was still concerned at how Izuku didn't act like normal, begging for mercy or asking him to stop. Bakugo stopped after a while and growled. Dumbass, Bakugo said, a look of worry on his face that Izuku didn't notice since the broccoli-haired teen was sprawled on the ground. Bakugo then left, but Izuku kept debating something as he slowly got up off the ground. Why? Izuku questioned. Why? Why does he keep doing this? Izuku growled in frustration. He knows that I'm not going to be able to get into UA. So why does he keep hurting me? Beating the crap out of me? Izuku slowly started to walk out of the classroom, and then out of the school. He walked into the schoolyard, many dark fantasies of him murdering Bakugo filling his mind. But he lacked the will to act. As he walked home on the street, a limp in his step, he wondered why so many bad things were happening to him. He stopped as he realized something. Wait a minute. Izuku's eyes widened as he realized something. The quirkless suicide rate is at 40%, increasing each year. They say people who are quirkless can't be heroes, and everyone always hurts and belittles and bullies quirkless people. Izuku looked up at the setting sun, and he realized what this society was all about. It's about suppressing the quirkless. Everyone is scared of what quirkless people are capable, and want this world to only consist of quirked people. Izuku growled before he started to run home. Then I guess I'll have to change that. I'll open everyone's eye, and I will make everyone cower in the name of a quirkless villain. Izuku started to smile as he thought, in my name. As he ran up the steps to his apartment, he realized that he was going to need to do something before he truly became a villain. Izuku was going to need something before he could be feared. He needed allies who could assist his goals, but not some half-assed villain who couldn't do crap, but an expert. Izuku entered his room after telling his mom, hello, and quickly got onto his laptop. He needed to research people who would share his ideals. Izuku typed in, failed heroes turned into villains. He saw a list of people, but he also saw that some of them were all captured and in jail or dead, so he growled in frustration. But then he saw a name that stood out, because it said unarrested by his name. Gentle Criminal, Izuku said before he opened a new tab and searched up Gentle Criminal. He found a YouTube address which made him raise an eyebrow. Why hello there, a young gentle criminal. Are you looking for something to believe in? Well, you're in luck, for I plan on changing the views of today's society. Izuku was interested. He checked the comments section and saw that the most recent comments were from a few hours ago, and the video was posted yesterday. He decided to throw the bait and typed into a comment, I'm interested in your work. Would you like to team up? He almost clicked send, but stopped before he went through the effort to make a new Google account so his account wasn't taken down. Afterwards, he sent it on the new account he made and smiled. Now, to make my dreams a reality. And I also need something to wear. A disguise, Izuku said. He then went onto a new tab and looked for a black market website that might sell gear for villains. His search turned up empty, but he wasn't surprised. It wouldn't be that easy to get a villain suit, Izuku said, before he went back into YouTube and noticed he got a reply. Where shall we meet? Presumably Gentle Criminal asked. He smirked. Well, that was quick. Instead of giving a reply, and went to Google Maps and got the directions to the trashed beach, which would be the perfect place to meet since no one would go there. We'll meet you there. Izuku smirked before he stood up, and he got dressed in something that wasn't hero-related. But he bumped into a shelf and something fell off of it. He picked up what fell, and noted it was a blank mask, completely blank, mainly because of an old band he liked. He was gonna paint it based off one of the members, but he decided against it, mainly because Bakugo would blow it up if he saw it. Izuku stared at it before he brought it with him to the trashed beach so that he could protect his identity. If he was gonna be a villain, he wanted no one to hurt his mother, and he wanted to be able to get away without a trace. A bit earlier, with Gentle Criminal and La Brava. Ah, a perfect tea time, Gentle said as he put his teacup down on the table in the home that he and his sidekick La Brava lived in. Yes, indeed, Gentle, La Brava agreed. She got a notification on her phone, presumably a new comment since it came from her work phone. La Brava pulled out her phone and was surprised at the comment she received. Gentle, Gentle, Gentle. Look, she showed him the comment. Gentle Criminal's eyes widened at the proposition. I'm interested in your work. Would you like to team up? La Brava was clearly curious of what Gentle's answer to it might be. Gentle smirked. Very interesting. La Brava, send a reply. Ask our viewer where we should meet. Yes, Gentle, La Brava said as she typed the reply. Where shall we meet? Gentle smiled. Let us suit up La Brava. He then disappeared to put on his costume. La Brava smiled as she got changed and saw that their potential partner had replied with a location instead of a line of text. She was a little suspicious of how quick the reply was, but she also responded fast, so it's to be expected. Gentle, we got a location. La Brava told the man she loved after she got done changing. Very well, Gentle Criminal replied. Let us go. The two then ventured all the way to the trashed beach that their new partner requested that they met at. We own the night, Izuku sung quietly as he waited for Gentle Criminal and La Brava to arrive at the beach. We own the night. We call, you rise. With you we never die, singin'. Huoa, we own the night. Huoa, we own the night. He then heard footsteps behind him, and stopped before turning and seeing the Gentle Criminal and La Brava walking towards him. The three were silent, but mainly because they were cautious of each other. Izuku thought that they might try to hurt or kill him if they thought he wasn't legit or worthy, so he brought a knife and the gun his mother hid in the kitchen cabinet that was for cereal. And Gentle and La Brava thought he might have been with the police, so they were on guard and ready to use La Brava's quirk. Gentle and La Brava, Izuku said. Waker of the Sheep 14. La Brava recalled, using the name of Izuku's second account that he used to contact them. Maybe I should have picked a different name than that because it seems stupid now that I think of it, Izuku realized. Trust me, it sounds rushed, Gentle Criminal agreed. So, you wanted to team up? I do, because I realized something about this society, Izuku said. And that this society is all about suppressing the sheep we call civilians. That's why they have heroes. They're scared of people with quirks, and also us quirkless. I'm gonna prove to this society that quirkless people are way stronger than all the cocky people that think that quirks are everything. Izuku smiled as he envisioned the society bowing to him, All Might lying dead at his feet. I can help you out, and you can help me out. That's how this will go. We can truly perform crimes to get us noticed, so that then people will fear me, and so that then you can truly become infamous. So what do you say? Will you help me? The Psychopath in him asked. Gentle and La Brava's eyes widened as they felt the emotions of every word that Izuku said. Gentle was really tempted, but he wanted results. He also didn't think a quirkless person could be of assistance to his goals. He sighed. I'm sorry, but what can a quirkless person do? That was the first mistake he made. Izuku growled before he shot a bullet at Gentle, who was shocked and barely countered it with his quirk, which sent it back at Izuku, who ducked it. I can do many things. I have dirt on many heroes. I have weaknesses to many heroes. I know All Might's weakness. I know what he truly looks like, and I want to kill him for the lies that he's spread. Izuku yelled at the top of his lungs, a massive flare of murder intent coming out of him, which made Gentle Criminal and La Brava stop because of how frightening it was to them. Gentle felt like he was about to throw up from it. That, or because he got here relatively quick and it had upset his stomach. He told me in his own words that I couldn't be a hero. And yet, he said in an interview that anyone could be a hero. He's filling so many people with lies that it makes me so frustrated. I want to humiliate him and kill him in the public's eye. I will expose him for the fake he is and kill him and watch this society crash down with his death. Izuku glared at Gentle Criminal and La Brava. He was my idol, and now I despise him with every fiber in my body, and I will gladly get my hands dirty and bloody to wake this society up. I will kill All Might. I will kill Sir Night-Eye. And I will kill anyone that has any connection to All Might. He started panting, out of breath, the two criminals releasing their breaths. Now, you have a fine conviction, Gentle said, making Izuku look at him. But other than that, what other skills do you have? Izuku smiled, liking where this was finally going. I have an amazing analyst skills, so I can get a vague idea of what someone's quirk is after seeing it in action once. And I've studied patrol patterns so I could pit us up against heroes and we can take them out. Izuku replied. I suppose that truly is one way to look at it. Putting us against heroes would get us more popularity than the stunts me and La Brava do, Gentle Criminal stated, seeing how fighting pro heroes would work to their advantage of gaining popularity. So, do we have a deal? Izuku asked. We have a deal, Gentle said. Only because I'm now mildly scared of what anger you had hidden under skin. I normally don't get scared so easily. Very well, Izuku said, smiling as if he wasn't yelling at the top of his lungs just a few moments ago. They then shook hands, a new trio of villains being formed. A dangerous trio of villains at that. 5 months. That's how long it has been since Izuku gave up on his dream of being a hero and joined Gentle Criminal and La Brava in the life of villainy. It wasn't as villainous as he thought it was. Just the two of them going about to try and open people's eyes about how some companies or stores have lied about things. Honestly, it was kind of petty, but it paid in the end. Izuku had a few times where he got onto the field and managed to help out Gentle Criminal. He also learned what La Brava's quirk was and was surprised by how strong it actually was. It kinda scared the teen just how powerful La Brava could make Gentle under the right circumstances. They also had gotten him a villain suit and some gear to help him with his newest plans, which was to find them a criminal organization to go to and exist in. Join. Sadly, he couldn't find much, and most of the things weren't as useful as he would like. For instance, he found a list of former Yakuza gangs that disbanded or were arrested. He found nothing that could be of assistance. Outside of villain life, Izuku still had a surprisingly normal dream. And as such, he managed to find a new way to get around a lot of things. For instance, he managed to somehow get away from Aldara Junior High and head to a better, faraway school, and he decided to invest himself in making gear that could potentially boost his combat prowess on the battlefield. He only made a gauntlet which was broken quite easily, so he scrapped a lot of ideas to further his combat abilities. Izuku also convinced his mother to enlist him in martial arts classes. He found the classes very enlightening. But his martial arts teacher, Kiro-sensei, was very strict. Quirkless just like Izuku, he trained the students in a diplomatic way to understand martial arts is not a technique, but a weapon as powerful as a quirk, and even stronger than some. Fortunately, Izuku managed to catch up with most of the class and become a lead example for a student, but nowhere near the top 5 students. Deku, Gentle Criminal's voice rang through the room, snapping Izuku out of his thoughts as the criminal said his villain name. Are you ready for our next operation? Operation Two-Side? Deku asked, surprised that they were using his idea of a way to potentially get a stronger ally. It's for the best. Even if it means I have to give up my ways of villain and get blood on my hands. So be it. Deku smiled as they headed towards Tokyo. This should be a pleasant visit. Not really. Traveling to Tokyo took a decent amount of time. However, their end goal would be worth it, especially once the plan had been devised. Their plans were to scour Tokyo's alleyways until they found the person they were looking for. From what Izuku had gathered, their target only appeared in back alleyways and killed in back alleyways. They had split up, and as Izuku jumped from building to building, roof to roof, and as he jumped from one, he slipped and he barely managed to grab the edge of the roof he was jumping to. Crap, that was close, Izuku said before his fingers slipped, and he then shouted in fright as he fell into a dumpster. Oh, Izuku said as he got out of the dumpster. He caught his breath as he looked up. Thank God there is a fire escape to the roof. He looked around the alley and then spotted a heavily wounded hero who was being attacked by a man who wore a lot of blades and had a katana out against the hero's neck. Izuku's eyes widened. He found their target, so that's a first. TCH, the target said before he slit the throat of the hero, making Izuku scare. You have a lot of nerve to suddenly fall into this alley, kid. He pointed the blade at Izuku. Choose your last words wisely, the hero killer, Stain, said. Izuku, who only stared at death once, felt extremely scared and swallowed the lump in his throat. I came SS searching for you, sent Stain. Izuku answered. To defeat me, Stain assumed. False heroes riddle this society, and even the kids are. No, not to defeat you. Izuku pulled out one of his hero notebooks, surprising Stain but still making him stay on guard. To recruit and assist you. TCH, Stain sheathed his blade and grabbed the book from Izuku and flipped the page. As Stain read through the book, he was getting surprised by Izuku's notes. Accurate and good notes and analysis of a bunch of heroes. Stain had only got a few basic things down for each hero he decided to hunt. The notes he took compared to Izuku had several differences, but Izuku had so many good notes and observations that genuinely made Stain think that Izuku was being honest. Okay, you piqued my interest. Tell me, kid, why give me this? Because I learned how cruel this society is the harsh way, Izuku replied. I was rejected by my own idol when I asked him if I could be a hero, yet he said that anyone could be a hero. Seems like even he was lying, Izuku said. But that sounds like Stain reached that point. Good. Yep. All Might, Izuku confirmed. He told me I couldn't be a hero. But however, if I can't be a hero, then tell me this, how come you, a man who trained his body day and night, can be a vigilante despite how your quirk isn't meant to strengthen your body? Stain was surprised before gripping the hilt of his sword. You've been studying me. Because I want to recruit you, Izuku said. Most heroes are the same. They mainly fight quirkless, but quirks just changes a few things that can change the tides of battle. Your quirk revolves around blood, based on how you licked your sword after you killed that hero, so I'm assuming you paralyzed Morning Sun, which prevented him from using his quirk and also stopping him from moving to stop you. Stain gritted his teeth. Of course, I could be incorrect about a few things, but your quirk is pretty powerful regardless. What is your point? Even a quirkless person like me can become a hero with the right training, right? Izuku asked. Stain's head perked up at that. You're quirkless. Yes, Izuku said. I plan on making this publicly known when I destroy today's society. And make them realize that the quirkless, who initially built this entire world, are not to be underestimated. I plan on making my brethren have a reason to live in this world. Stain stood tall and ungripped his sword's hilt. So, you also wish to change this world. What's my payment? I get you information on more fake heroes, and we assist you with several of your kills, Izuku answered. Fine, Stain said. And you said we. Yes, he said we, came the voice of Gentle Criminal, who stood in the dark of the alleyway with La Brava. We are also gonna give up our way of villainy to assist you with your kills. Who's this clown? Stain asked. I am not a clown, Gentle Criminal argued. I am the Gentle Criminal, and I was a rejected hero despite the fact I also wished to help people. Yet no one believed in me. Forgotten, I have decided to fight for my own noble cause by opening the eyes of today's society. He sighed. Sadly, no one cared. But together, Izuku picked up, taking hold of the conversation. We can make a difference, and we will change everything. Together, the four of us. Stain scoffed. Fine, I'll accept your help, but don't think this means I'll always help you fools. I'll accept it, Gentle Criminal said with a smile. We need a team name, La Brava suggested. I don't care, Stain said. Decide a name, but not one that'll make me seem or sound like a soft joke. Stained criminals, Gentle responded immediately. Society's rejected four, Izuku added, speaking almost exactly when Gentle said his idea. Everyone stared at Izuku, making the boy go silent. What? No cap, Stain said. I like it. I'll go with that one. I thought you didn't care. La Brava asked. Well, this boy had a good one, considering we're all probably rejects, Stain replied. And so it's official, Gentle Criminal started with a smile. Together, society's rejected four will terrorize and open the eyes of this world. Now then, let's flee before the heroes get here, Stain said as the four fled the alleyway. Tamura, it's time for you to start recruiting, came the voice of All for One as Tamura sat in the bar which doubled as the hideout of the League of Villains, a group that had yet to make an appearance since All for One was biding his time. Now was the best time to start. Already, Sensei. Why now? Shigaraki asked as he paused the game he was playing in his Nintendo Switch, going through and trying to complete every classic mode for every fighter in Smash Bros. Because we don't want to fall into the shadows, seeing as recently the Gentle Criminal and his new group known as Society's Rejected Four have started a new, more cruel and dangerous job, killing off false heroes with the assistance of the hero killer, Stain, All for One explained. And I would like you to try and recruit these people. What's so special about them? They're just a bunch of NPCs that just kill heroes, Shigaraki asked. You see, one of them is quirkless, and before the group was formed, Gentle Criminal was a rejected hero, and has been doing his thing for years, not getting caught once despite how many videos he's posted on the internet. All for One answered. I also know that the hero killer is a mass murderer and is a trained assassin. They could be very useful to us Tamura, especially since they are highly promising individuals. Shigaraki hummed, contemplating it. Fine, I'll see what use they might have. He looked at Kurogiri. Kurogiri, go search for them please. Very well, young master, Kurogiri said before teleporting off. All for One smiled, pleased that Shigaraki was at least going to use the four of them. He would learn something for real from them. Now then, Tamura unpaused his game and continued to fight Ganon while playing as Toon Link. He really needed to get Tamura off his video game addiction. I win, Tamura shouted, laughing as he beat Ganon. All for One shook his head before looking over at a photo. While he couldn't entirely see it, he could still see it in his mind, remembering when he first took it with Tamura when he was young. He smiled. It's coming soon. The day of revenge. Kurogiri was warping around Japan, around the area of the last murder caused by Society's Rejected Four. Another false hero dead. If Kurogiri was lucky, he would be able to find them before they left town, this kill marking the last in the normal pattern of Stain's kill pattern. He just wanted to find them quickly before they left, so he didn't taste Tamura's wrath again. and he did not want to have to go shopping for more video games. It's amazing how thin Tamura is, despite the fact he doesn't ever actually get out much, Kurogiri commented randomly as he teleported around a bit. Honestly, I wonder why he hasn't gained any weight. Secondary quirks are possible, but they aren't exactly quirks. More like passive things passed down through DNA that are constantly ignored, came a new voice, before Kurogiri turned around and got socked in the face, which is a first considering he never actually got punched much. He normally phased the punches through a portal and then closed it, the arm coming off from whoever tried to attack him, which were mainly a bunch of drunks. When Kurogiri recovered, he saw the man he was looking for, the formidable Deku. Well, I found you, Kurogiri said. What? Are you a hero? Deku asked. Because you're not gonna get anything out of me, even if you tortured me. No, I am a villain. We wish to invite your group into the League of Villains. Kurogiri finished. Deku looked like he was thinking about it. What's in it for me and my squad? We will not kill you, and we can provide you with better means for combat, Kurogiri answered. Oddly specific, Deku said. But, fine, we'll play with you guys for a little bit. Kurogiri smiled. Gather your squad, and we'll meet at the... They've been here the whole time, dumbass, Deku said, before Kurogiri saw all of the squad appear out of the shadows of the night. Well shit. Yeah, killing our comrade isn't gonna happen, Stain said. Or any of us. Take us to your leader, Deku said. Very well, Kurogiri said, while opening up a warp gate. Stain held a knife to Kurogiri's neck. Gentle, La Brava, you two go first. Then come back if there isn't any danger. Very well, Gentle said. Gentle and La Brava entered his warp gate, and Kurogiri nervously sweated, scared that he actively might die. He's been scared before. His true master is evidence of that since he could get angry at times. But this was just like that. Maybe a bit lighter, but it was still as heavy as the rage produced by All For One. Were these guys really just low-ranked villains? Gentle stepped out of the portal. It's safe. They wish to assist us. Stain withdrew his sword from where it rested next to Kurogiri's neck, before putting it in his sheath. You're lucky, Stain said briefly, before entering the portal, Deku following behind him. Kurogiri sighed, before warping himself back to the base. So, your society's rejected for, Tamura commented as he observed them. He could Stain was a skilled assassin, just based off of the many knives and blades he had. Even his boots have spikes for crying out loud, and those would hurt a lot. Deku, while slightly intimidating because of his mask, was clearly an intelligence person because of his rather bland dark green suit. Gentle Criminal and La Brava looked like they would be all about deception. Tamura didn't like the last two. He didn't see their use, but it was a 4-in-1 package, so he might as well keep them. I got to say, you're quite popular on the net for your stunts, Tamura continued. But, skipping all the boring stuff, I want you four to join the League of Villains. Trained professionals like you four are just what the League needs, especially before we strike. I've never heard of you guys before, Deku said. Are you all newcomers? Brilliant analysis, came the voice of Sensei. Sensei, Tamura questioned, surprised All For One was actually speaking. You sound familiar, kid, All For One said. But, regardless, we have one simple goal. Kill All Might and rule all of Japan. Tamura noticed the flinch that came suddenly to Stain, but the more violent one that came from Deku. Deku's hand twitched a bit. Kill All Might. Deku looked like he was smiling under his mask. Oh, how I've always wanted to hear those words from someone else's mouth. The three members of the League, and Deku's comrades, questioned. I became a villain for the sole purpose of humiliating All Might in public, by showing how weak he truly has become, and then killing him for the world to see how powerful the quirkless really are. Deku explained. I want to make All Might suffer, just like how I've suffered my whole life from being quirkless. I see you are a twisted soul, crushed by actions and the words of your own idol, All For One commented. Heh, I like you a lot. And you know All Might's weakness too. Deku's eyes widened, before narrowed at the screen. How do you know about All Might's weakness? Did he show you too? Are you a former fan like me? I know about it, because I gave it to him. All For One revealed, which shocked the rejected four. I am the notorious villain All For One, and I have existed for years. All Might is the only hero to date that has been a pest for me to deal with, solely because he's the strongest I've fought, even with the hundreds of quirks in my arsenal. What? Stain questioned. There is a villain who can harm such a powerful man. This is. Deku started to laugh. This is amazing. Someone who knows my pain. What? You're not even remotely scared that I could nearly kill All Might in his prime, and I could easily break you in two? All For One questioned, while Tamura just stared at Deku. What the hell? Did he have balls of steel? No, in fact, I find it amazing how someone as strong as you exists. You can help me with ridding the world of him, Deku said, letting a bit of his mental insanity take over. I've heard some legends about you, but this will just be amazing. Deku had an idea. I have an idea. One that would benefit the league. Everyone was wondering what it was. You say you have hundreds of quirks, which implies you can take quirks. If I'm right, you can also give them to people, Izuku said. So, here's my plan. I'll take the UA entrance exam and infiltrate the ranks of the heroes, and that way, I can get my own revenge against my bully, and also, we can destroy the hero society from the inside out. I would need a quirk, but still, I could manage decently well without one. I like that thinking, All for One commented. However, I don't exactly trust you yet. None of you, in fact. There is, 2 months until the UA entrance exam. Prove to me you can trust me, and I'll give you a quirk. A powerful one that was going to be given to a toy we have. Prove that you can be trusted, and I'll give it to you instead. 2 months before the day of the UA entrance exam. Deku was speechless. It figures, giving what Sensei was offering. The thought of giving and taking quirks seems almost impossible. But the more time that passed, the more Deku realized this was the only way to get into UA. What do you need me to do? Deku asked. Tamura knew Sensei was smiling as the infamous villain said, Very well. We'll commence with the first task. I want you to scope out the hero agency of All Might and tell me all. I've already done that, Deku interrupted, before pulling out a notebook and throwing it on the counter. Along with every appearance of All Might on the news, minor events All Might has been in, and potential connections with other pro heroes, from both the top 10 and from down the ranks, such as Sir Night-Eye, Bubble Girl, Centipter, and I found he has friend on the police force, including a man with a quirk called lie detector known as Detective Tsukachi. Other potential known people who are related to him in some way would include David Shield and his family, who live on Island, the faculty that teach UA, including Recovery Girl and Principal Nezu. And this one UA staff member who was a teacher only for 1 year, known as Gran Torino, who I couldn't get much info on. Everyone in the room was speechless. Deku noticed this and blushed, and rubbed the back of his head. Since studying H-Hero's Eye is a hobby of mine, okay, it's no doubt that I would can know a lot about my former idol. Former, Sensei questioned. All Might is the one who broke my dream, Deku informed. I want to make him suffer before I kill him. Such a twisted demeanor, and such an undying, hidden rage. All for One thought. Maybe I underestimated him. Change of plans. All for One said. Kurogiri, warp him over here. This surprised everyone. I want to talk alone with him. Why yes, master, Kurogiri said, before engulfing Deku with a portal, and disappearing into the room with AFO with Deku. The rest of you are welcome to settle down. Tamura will show you to the rooms here, All for One said, before the feed shut off, and they were in the dark, not knowing what was going on with Deku, and not knowing what would happen. Deku was suddenly in a room with several monitors, and he looked around, taking heavy notes at the many medical supplies items in the room. Needles, antibiotics, bandages, scalpels. It was like someone was being treated. Deku then turned to look at a chair, which was in front of several monitors, one saying transmission cut. Rank C villain, Deku, began the voice of All for One, before the villain in question turned around. And Izuku got a good look at the condition of All for One's face. Broken, eyeless and hairless. It's a miracle his ears are still working, and he can still breathe at all. Or that he's alive, especially since his brain should have been hit by whatever damaged him, which would have killed a normal human. Aka, Izuku Midoriya. Izuku's eyes widened before he pulled out a knife, but was quickly disarmed by a creature that made Izuku panic, the creature's brain exposed. The eyes were clearly lifeless. Izuku wasted no time and delivered a quick chop to the brain, and killed the creature instantly. More of them appeared, and Izuku tried to dodge some of them but got hit regardless. He took down a few more, but they just kept coming. Stop, All for One commanded. And the creatures stopped. What? Izuku questioned. He looked at All for One. What are these things? And H, how do you know my name? All for One chuckled a bit. Dear Izuku, have you really forgotten me? All for One lifted up his sleeve, and Izuku's eyes widened as he looked at the mark on All for One's arm. The symbol he was so familiar with. It somewhat hurt Izuku to see it. You uncle. Izuku recognized the tattoo on All for One's arm by a mile away. It was almost unreal that the mark was there, the one he had wanted since childhood but was told by his mother he couldn't get a tattoo until he had left the house and went to college and such. On his arm was a gray skull, fit with 2 black crossbones, but at the top of both crossbones were 2 flames. One was a calm, gentle blue flame, which was rather small compared to the ferocious, raging red flame that was large and could engulf the gray skull easily. The skull also had a mask that covered its teeth, and it looked like a metallic one that was similar to what might be worn by a pro hero or a villain. Izuku had tears rolling down his eyes as he took off his own mask, which was shaped just like the one on the skull since that was his inspiration for the mask. Uncle Vegeta, he said before falling to his knees as he stared at the famous villain, who lightly smiled and was internally crying since he had no eyes, which was evident by the sniffling. Young Izu, All for One replied, using the nickname he had given Izuku a long time ago, which made Izuku start crying harder before suddenly yelling, and years of sadness came out as he fell to his knees and hugged his own stomach, feeling slightly sick as he remembered the promised days. The days where there was someone who believed in him. The days he was free. Flashback. Izuku, guess who's here? Izuku's mother, Inko, who was still rather skinny at the time but was noticeably gaining some weight based off of her chubby stomach, called out as she welcomed in Vegeta, or All for One, who at the time was still in his prime. A 7-year-old Izuku came running out, knowing the cheerful tone in his mother's voice as the one where his favorite and only uncle came to visit. Uncle Vegeta, Izuku said as he ran and hugged All for One, who went by the alias of Vegeta at the time. Young Izu, how are you, my favorite nephew? Vegeta asked as hugged Izuku back. I'm doing good, Izuku replied, but even All for One knew the lie as soon as he heard it. Bakugo is still bullying you. Why don't you tell someone? The infamous villain asked, Inko biting her lip, as she knew this was something that was going on. Cause I believe Kaken will change, Izuku said, showing his heroic spirit, which made All for One smile. You're such a kind-hearted hero. I bet you'll be the #1 hero one day, Vegeta said while smiling, which made Izuku smile back and hug him. Inko smiled too, wiping a stray tear from her eye. Now, why don't we go get you some ice cream? Ice cream? Izuku questioned before getting all giddy. Yes. Well then come on, let's go, All for One said as he stood up. To an outsider, it would look like All for One, Vegeta was Izuku's father, but the reality was he wasn't. The two then went out for ice cream in the next town over, which was where they always went for ice cream. As they waited at a table for their ice cream, since the shop was filled with a lot of customers due to the popularity of the local ice cream store, Vegeta noticed Izuku writing something in a notebook. What are you writing, Izuku? He asked as he looked at the notebook from across the table. I'm writing my hero notes, Izuku said before closing the book and showing All for One the front cover of it, which said Hero Notes for My Future. Vol 3. I've been taking notes of heroes. Izuku gave the notebook to All for One, and the villain went through the book, having doubts at first before being surprised at how amazingly accurate these notes were, minus the many spelling errors that riddled the books. Young Izu, these are amazing, Vegeta said, before giving Izuku the book back. You would make a brilliant support hero if you studied villains and gave the information to heroes so they could take down the villains. Hell, you would make a brilliant spy as well. Or a detective. Thank you, Uncle, Izuku said with a smile, feeling free and amazing. I'll become the greatest hero ever. I promise. Don't promise something unless you know you can keep it, Vegeta said, which made Izuku confused. You're so young right now, but there are still millions of heroes out there, and that's a lot of competition. Plus, there are many definitions of hero, so don't promise me that. Just promise me that you'll try once for the UA entrance exam when you're of age, and then go for the backup options. Vegeta smiled. I believe in you, Izuku, no matter which way you go. Izuku, his eyes watering, nodded, before wiping his tears away, thinking that not even his amazing uncle believed in him, before realizing he was just trying to make sure Izuku didn't make a promise he couldn't keep, though it was one he was going to keep. Thank you, Uncle Vegeta, Izuku said. It's no problem, young Izu, Vegeta said, before their ice cream came, and they both smiled as they began to eat their ice cream. That was a bright day, and it was during a bright time. Present, Mom said you were killed in a shootout, before a villain ended up using a quirk and burning your body along with several of your friends down, so all that was left was ashes, Izuku said. But what actually happened? All Might, he bashed my face in. It did nearly kill me, but with the help of the doctor and my many quirks, I managed to live, if only barely, All for One answered. But why fake your death from us? Izuku asked. If they knew you two had ties to the most dangerous and oldest villain known to the world, do you think you would actually be able to become a hero? All for One asked. No, Izuku looked down, realizing that All for One did want Izuku to become a hero, even if it meant they'd be on the opposite sides of the battlefield. But I don't understand. Why did you want me to be a hero despite the fact you're a villain? He reminded me of my younger brother, All for One replied. He was a hero at heart, just like you. I couldn't bring myself to say no. But I knew you wouldn't become a hero. But that doesn't mean I didn't want that to change, or for you to give up completely. Society needs an awakening. That even the quirkless can do something if they put their minds to it. You were the one I saw leading it. Izuku's eyes widened. How did you recognize me? Was it a quirk? I didn't at first. I just thought you were really intelligent. But then when you came over here, a quirk that allows me to sense my surroundings since I am blind showed me your figure, and I saw that it was you. Mainly because of your hair, I assumed you were my nephew, even if we weren't related by blood. All for One explained. Your reactions confirmed everything. That, and you listed some things that I recognized from your first hero notebook, besides Gran Torino and Night Eye's sidekick. So, do you really want to give me a quirk now? Izuku asked. I'm currently second-guessing this decision, but it would be great to see what you can accomplish with it, All for One said. But it doesn't seem right for a person to lead a quirkless uprising while they have a quirk, right? That is true, Izuku said, realizing how weird that would be. But still, that doesn't mean I'm going to give up on you, All for One said. We can always work around the whole quirkless thing. They make support gear for a reason, you know. Izuku's eyes widened. Wait, what are you saying? Izuku asked. I'm saying that instead of giving you a quirk, we give you the ultimate armor, and with said armor, it'll be like you have multiple quirks, when really you don't. I believe this is possible, since the black market is capable of many things, All for One explained, revealing the plan to Izuku. And you would get into UA perfectly fine. That is one way, which would be the hero course way. Oh right, they have multiple courses in UA, Izuku remembered. The hero course, which is very hard to get into, the general studies or gen ed course for basic education, and where those who failed the hero course exam go if they have space. The business course for making exceptionally great marketers, which helps major businesses. And the support course, where they make support gear for the hero course students as well as gear for pro heroes once they graduate and get into the support industry. Precisely. In fact, you would get top marks on the Gen Ed exam since you study so hard and are intelligent in most fields. Remember your 3rd grade math quiz, which was said to be 5th grade level? Yes, it was actually a bit difficult at the time, but I managed to get top marks, Izuku said. Katsuki beat me up thinking I cheated. All for One took note of how Izuku didn't call Bakugo by the nickname Izuku had given him. But he proceeded with this discussion. I also believe you would be a great support course student due to the fact you could observe the hero course students, and then help the support students come up with gear that would help the hero course students. But there is a secret meaning for all of them, correct? Izuku asked. Of course, you're a villain now and a part of the League of Villains. All for One smiled. For starters, if you got into the hero course, you would help us with the quirks they have, and if All Might does teach at UA like I believe, we could formulate a time to take him down with the schedule. If he isn't there though, we could always kidnap 1 or 2 students. If you got into Gen Ed, you could eventually transfer into the hero course by showing how hard you train and by how strong quirkless people are as well if they try to break past their limits. Plus Ultra, am I right? Izuku chuckled a bit because they were talking about UA. And if you entered the support course, you'd still observe the students and provide them with good gear, but you'd try and transfer to the hero course still, and show that quirkless people can be heroes, but by using their minds and by making gear to help them with what they can't do since they don't have a quirk. All for One smiled. A brilliant plan, right? It is, Izuku agreed. I like it a lot. It should work too. I mean, who would expect a quirkless person to be a spy? A lot of people, All for One, popping Izuku's bubble. But it's not like it'd matter, unless you're a hero course student. That being said, All for One grew serious as he looked at Izuku, and Izuku looked back at him. Which course are you going to join? Izuku looked down, thinking for a good hot minute. There was so much pressure on each decision. But even Izuku knew there was only one good option, mainly because one was too risky and the other would be so boring. He looked up at All for One. I think support might be the best way to go, Izuku said. All for One nodded. Very well, All for One said. However, I have 2 rules for you if that's what you decide to do. Yes, Izuku asked. No telling anyone you're quirkless until the sports festival, and no telling anyone about your past since Bakugo might go to UA. It had crossed Izuku's mind that Bakugo would go to UA because he was going to UA. There was no question about it. He aced the mock exam, and it only made sense he would go where the number 1 went. Okay, I'll do that, Izuku said, before putting his mask back on. May I go back to my crew? Very well, All for One said. Kurogiri. Yes, sir, Kurogiri said as he opened a portal, before Izuku realized Kurogiri heard everything. Don't worry about Kurogiri. He won't tell anyone. He listens to my orders, so he won't tell anyone about what happened in here unless I tell him to, All for One said. You may go, Izuku. And, isn't Ko doing okay? Izuku looked at All for One as he stood outside the warp gate. She's doing good, but she's gained a lot more weight, but she's still healthy. And she did divorce my father too, if that's what you're wondering since I know you liked my mom. Izuku stepped through the portal, and Kurogiri closed it. All for One sadly smiled. Oh, how I wished I had my head like I did so long ago. I wouldn't mind being his stepfather. All the more reason for us to find you a suitable quirk to fix your injury, Kurogiri told All for One. But I think I found the answer. Really? All for One asked. Yes, in the form of a Yakuza gang known as the Shai Hasekai. They could help us with fixing your head and restoring you so you're in your prime. We shall talk to them and see if this plan could work, All for One told Kurogiri, who nodded and disappeared. All for One turned back to his monitors and picked up a photo frame he always had sitting on his desk, of him, and Ko, and a 8-year Izuku, all of them smiling and looking carefree. He leaned back, knowing what the photo looked like by heart despite the fact he couldn't see it himself. I miss those days, he said to himself. I really wish that All Might didn't find me back then. Maybe I could have retired like I wanted to. He put the photo back before sighing. Let's hope I can be fixed. You'll be competing in a martial arts tournament. Izuku's martial arts teacher, Kiro, informed Izuku during a Monday afternoon when Izuku went to his martial arts class. Needless to say, Izuku was surprised. Wait, what? Izuku questioned, surprised by this absolutely sudden and random announcement. You've grown to be my best student, pushing yourself more and more harder each time you've came, Kiro-sensei began to explain. Despite how many times you've heard your arms pop, and how many times we've had to bandage you from breaking a few ribs, you still push harder. You're going to represent my dojo during a competition, which will include 3 other dojos. Oh, really? Izuku was surprised. This was gonna be rather exciting. Izuku smiled. I'm ready. Good. Cause it takes place tomorrow and I already had signed you up as my representative, Kiro said, which made Izuku's jaw drop. What? Izuku questioned. You signed me up already. Well, it was either you said yes or you said no and I'd expel you from my dojo, Kiro replied. Plus, I want to show them what the fireless dragon is capable of. At this, Izuku nodded, recognizing the name as his nickname after explaining that his father, Hisashi Midoriya, had fire breath as his quirk, which earned him the name of the Fireless Dragon. All right, Izuku said with a smile, ready for this tournament. Just don't let the fact that quirks are allowed get to you, Izuku's sensei said after Izuku said he was ready, which made Izuku lose his smile and frown. Kiro took note, but said nothing, hoping Izuku would soon get over his anger at whatever it was as soon as he could. For now, he could only hope that Izuku would represent his dojo well. The day of the tournament, Izuku sat in his dojo uniform, which was a black gi that was ripped around the sleeves and around the waist, and along the bottom of the pant legs. He was waiting for the next round, the final round of the tournament to begin. Having already beaten his opponent, who made the mistake of pissing him off by insulting his quirkless dojo. No one gets away unscathed after doing that. So, you're the fireless dragon everyone has been talking about. A new voice, a female one at that, asked, before Izuku, who was in deep thought, opened his eyes and looked up, and saw that a very beautiful yet clearly well-trained teenage girl was talking to him. The girl smiled and offered her hand for a handshake. I'm Itsuka Kendo. Izuku, reluctantly, shook her hand. Hi, I'm Izuku Midoriya. And yes, I am the fireless dragon. He looked at her in the eyes, giving a small glare. Is there a problem? Oh no, please do not think I'm like those other guys, Kendo said, trying to clear things up a bit. I was just asking because I was just curious, and I actually heard about your analyst skills, and I wanted to see if after the final round I could ask you a few things for improving my quirk and my technique. Sure, Izuku answered. Kendo gave a smile and nodded. Thanks, I look forward to fighting you in the final round. Izuku's eyes widened a bit, before Kendo left and before Izuku could ask her a question of his own. But she was already off talking with some of her dojo mates, which left Izuku to wonder why she wanted his help. But more importantly, was she going to take pity on him, despite how much he'd hate it? When the match was about to start, Kiro was sitting in a foldable chair, sitting next to the other 3 martial arts teachers of the different dojos that had gathered today for the special tournament that took place at this time every year. In truth, he was hoping his losing streak would stop today since Izuku was here, and so far, it looked possible. But he wasn't about to get his hopes up. So Ken, are you ready to get another loss on your continuing to lose streak? One of the other dojo masters, a slightly buff but still very pretty female with dark skin, long brown hair, green almost jade-like eyes, and a very carefree smile asked, as she looked forward to this next match, despite how her student had lost to Itsuka Kendo in the second round. Says the one who lost in the first round. Again, Kiro retorted, and the female teacher laughed. Ouch, that one stung a bit, she replied jokingly. Shut your trap, Kaho. The teacher of the elite dojo snarled, still annoyed that his dojo student lost in the first round. And to a quirkless kid no less, since he despised quirkless people, seeing them as nothing but a waste of space. This man had lightly tanned skin like Kiro. And while Kiro had slicked back black hair and glasses, the elite dojo master had spiky white hair, red eyes with no glasses, and also a scar over his right eye, which fit with the massive scar that ran along his cheek down to his shoulder blade. Truth be told, the elite dojo master looked like something from an ancient fighting game, while Kiro looked like a slightly buff substitute teacher. Oh, what's wrong, Merrick? Kaho began. Did the itty-witty quirkless boy beat your big bad strong quirked boy? Shut it, Kaho, before I break your arm again, Merrick retorted with a glare. Y'all are petty, Kiro commented, before turning and facing the mat of which Izuku and Kendo would face off on, which was a matted platform, which was surrounded by a metal cage to ensure no one would get sent flying into someone else, and so no one interfered. Ken, came the voice of the 4th master, which made Kiro turn to look at them. The 4th dojo master was a tall, muscular man, with his orange hair long enough to be put into a ponytail, his blue eyes being calm and gentle but held years of practice and experience in them, and his posture well organized and prepared for any outcome. He was also Itsuka Kendo's father, but much like Kuro, he was quirkless. Keigo, Kuro replied, using his fingers to shift his glasses to fit right back on his nose properly. I see you've gained a new ace, Keigo commented as he sat next to Kuro. Yes, I have, Kuro replied. You see yourself in him, don't you? Keigo asked. I don't know what you're talking about, Kuro said, showing no emotions towards what Keigo said, though that's just how he was normally to people. In truth, he did see himself in Izuku, but no one needed to know that. Well, whatever, Keigo said. I was just asking. Hey, boys, are you two gonna make the bet that we always decide to hold each time we do this? Kaho asked Keigo and Kuro. Oh right, that, Keigo muttered. I don't know what I'll bet on this time. Let's raise the stakes, Kuro said. If Izuku loses, then my dojo will disband, and I'll never show my face in public again. The other three teachers all were surprised by this bet, even Merrick and Kaho. Are you crazy? Kaho questioned. I get it, you take pride in your students, but damn, that seems like a lot of pressure to put on a teen, Merrick commented. Well, it's called raising the stakes for a reason, Kuro said. Fine, Keigo said, agreeing with this change of events. Should my daughter lose, I'll have her join your dojo, and also if you dare finish that sentence, came the voice of Izuku, which made Merrick, Kaho, and Keigo freeze from the sudden murderous intent he gave off. I'll break every bone in your body. What the? This kid. Kaho was shaking a bit as all of the teachers, but Kuro thought, he's insane. Were you just gonna make a bet with your daughter like that, and not even let her know what would happen? Cause if so, that's fucked up, Izuku said to Keigo. Have her join our dojo against her will. And I'm assuming that the rest of the sentence was gonna be something with a L, so maybe listen, perhaps learn or lie. To who? My sensei. Cause he'd simply tell her to go home to you. Or perhaps to me. But either way, this whole betting thing just seems rather fucked up. Izuku walked past the dojo masters and made his way to the small arena stage. So don't make a bet without thinking about the feelings of others, you bastards. Unbeknownst to Izuku, Itsuka heard the whole thing and was blushing a little bit. Why did he defend me like that? Itsuka questioned. Did he just think it was fucked up? Or was it because he didn't like it at all? Either way, she wasn't just gonna forget who Izuku was by tomorrow. In truth, she was already thinking about remembering him, though she'd have more than one reason to remember him when tomorrow did come. After a few more minutes, the match was about to begin, with Izuku and Kendo standing inside the metal cage. Kendo saw this as a friendly spar, and a chance to get to know Izuku well. Truth be told, she would say she was a bit interested in him, since he seemed so mysterious to her. But to Izuku, he saw this as a chance to show that quirks aren't everything. He already had formulated a few plans to try and take her down, assuming she had a quirk similar to her father's. But it would be executing them that would be a challenge due to his current condition that no one but his sensei knew about. The match between the quirkless Wanders and the Crushing Fist dojos, and the final round of the annual private martial arts competition shall now begin. The only rules are no fatal life-lasting injuries, at least the ones that can be avoided, or killing. The win will be decided when either opponent can't stand, is unconscious, or surrenders, Kaho said, since she was the referee of the match, stating the rules that were given that were decided by all four of the dojo masters. Now, fight. I'll end this swiftly, Kendo shouted, before charging forward, which made Izuku close his eyes, before assuming a counter stance of a fighting style he wished to try out since he made it. Wait, that kid, Keigo began thinking, as he observed Izuku's counter stance from the sidelines. That's not an official style. But what is it? When Kendo got close, Izuku's eyes opened suddenly before he said, air slice. Kendo's eyes widened, but she had already thrown her fist at him, while it slowly grew big due to her quirk. Cookie cutter counter. Izuku then mimicked a swing of a katana, and it would have cut Kendo's hand if he held a real sword, before he kicked her in the face, breaking her nose in the process, though she still hit him in the ribs, and he gritted his teeth as he tried not to flinch. As Kendo stumbled, she felt a sudden pain in her hand, and she opened her fist to see cuts on the palm of her hand, the same hand she had thrown at Izuku. It was cut and bleeding. The shape of the cut was shaped like an animal's bite mark. My air slice is meant to mimic swords, Izuku began. And so, by concentrating hard enough, I can manifest you getting cut by actual swords, even though I hold no swords, not even an invisible one. The only requirements I need are you to be in range, and I need absolute concentration. Izuku's eyes narrowed, a small drop of blood coming out of his mouth. If I were to have a secondary quirk, a quirk that isn't a quirk, this would technically be my third non-quirks. What are you talking about? Kendo questioned as she backed away from Izuku to gain some distance. It's a research topic that's been abandoned due to lack of evidence, Izuku answered. For example, my mother's quirk lets her pull small objects to her hand, though only small objects, like pens, papers, and action figures, a weak telekinesis quirk. But at the same time, when she gets all sad and mopey, she could literally cry a river from how many tears she'd shed for some reason. Izuku stood up straight now, not in a fighting position. I have the same thing in me. And as I've demonstrated, my air slice, or no sword style if you prefer, is my third. Then what's your second? Kendo asked curiously, wondering where he learned this no sword style from. That's something for me to know, Izuku began before leaping forward and appearing in front of her swiftly, which surprised and startled Kendo, before he delivered a swift uppercut to the prodigy's chin, and then a roundhouse kick to her side, which sent her into the cage. And for you to never know until I use it. So something lethal, Kendo thought as she stood up, feeling the pain of Izuku's attacks, and also a small trickle of blood coming from her broken nose. Or something mental. Damn, he's just unpredictable. Regardless, she couldn't give up yet. Kendo charged forward again, and this time enlarged her fists early and swung them at Izuku like a pincer attack. And Izuku was about to dodge before he felt a pain in his side, and he jumped a moment too late, and she grabbed his foot before throwing him into the cage. He coughed up his saliva and slowly got up before getting a swift chop to his right shoulder, but sent a wave of pain down his arm before he narrowly dodged a right hook from Kendo. He landed on his now hurt shoulder before jumping back to his feet. Why is he slowing down? Itsuka and the dojo masters but Kuro questioned while they observed Izuku. Hey, are you okay? Kendo asked Izuku. I don't need your pity, Izuku basically spat at her, which shocked her. Just because I'm quirkless doesn't mean you should underestimate me. At this he charged forward, and she blocked a swift jab aimed at her stomach by enlarging her hand before trying to land a normal punch on him, which he managed to somehow predict, and he glared at her and she moved her body to the left, before a cut appeared on her shoulder, almost next to her neck. He's trying to knock me out, Kendo thought, before she kicked Izuku with a fast raise of her leg, which moved his head, but he immediately glared at her and headbutted her leg back down, before throwing a barrage of punches at her, most of which she blocked, before she hit him in the stomach with a giant fist which sent him across the mat and into the metal cage. Izuku fell to the ground, and Itsuka relaxed for a moment before she saw Izuku slowly stand up, though his movements were shaky, way shakier than before. When he finally stood up, his body was leaning forward, his arms limp and his head hanging, his face unseeable to Itsuka. Kendo tensed up. Why do you keep getting up? Why are you shaking? Did she hit him that hard? I'm not dead yet, Izuku said as he raised his head to look at her. And as long as I'm alive, I won't stop fighting. Not until I prove it to them all. To Bakugo, to that shitty middle school, to that bastard of a false hero, a liar used as a shield for society's faults. Bakugo, one of the students of Kendo's dojo, questioned after hearing it. Wait, that's a kid at my new school. Really? Another one of Kendo's dojo mates asked. You know him? Not really. But he acts all arrogant and superior in class, just cause he's a prodigy and gotten a really strong quirk, the first dojo mate said. Then you must have heard stories about shitty Deku. Useless Deku. The quirkless Deku. Izuku growled as he overheard their conversation. What? Kendo questioned, before Kuro looked down, and shifted his glasses as Izuku glared at her. What the hell are you talking about? Who is Deku? Izuku then began to chuckle, which confused her before he began to laugh. Are you stupid? Izuku grabbed a hold of his gi's sleeve, a part that had a rip in it from hitting the cage and getting ripped. And quirkless, don't the pieces fit together? Izuku then ripped his gi shirt off of his body, and everyone froze at the sight of his body. The one way to describe Izuku's upper body would simply be that it was ravaged. There were scars all across his body, and parts of discoloration in his skin, some brighter and darker than other spots on his body, all looking charred or burned, even complete with several scars from getting cut all across his body. Kendo froze, and she raised a hand to her mouth. She knew that quirkless people led quite snotty lives, but this wasn't what she thought. And no way, she muttered. Yes way, Izuku shouted, his anger starting to leak through. And it hurts every day knowing I am quirkless. And it hurts every day when I do normal activities, like eating, or walking, or even just laying in my bed. All because he was a prodigy. Izuku chuckled a bit. It's funny how you could go from being best friends to nothing in the span of a few moments. All because some asshole thought that beating up the only quirkless boy in school would be fun. And everyone was in on it, even the lower and upper class men. Izuku glared at Kendo. Now fight me. I can't. Kendo's eyes were watering. Why did she just feel so empty? Why was this sight just so depressing? Not after this. Because I'm quirkless. Because I'm injured. Izuku questioned before running forward and punching her in the face. Well, guess what? His murderous intent was leaking through harder than before now. Villains don't give two shits about if you're injured, or are sad, or on a date. They don't care about anything but themselves. Izuku hit her harder now. They don't get a damn. He kicked her into the cage. So stop caring about who or what I am, and fight me, damn it. Kendo slowly stood up and started walking forward, slowly, and Izuku just ran at her, ready to deliver a final attack and knock her out with his no-sword style, before she suddenly hugged him. Izuku stopped for a moment, but glared at her and was about to hit her, before she kicked him with her knee in his solar plexus, and he fell limp, but remained conscious. I'm so sorry. Your life must have been shit, Kendo said, crying more actively now, not even trying to hide how hurt she felt from seeing someone treated so badly and from hearing how bad his life was, which was something she never heard happen since she never grew up in such a shitty environment like Izuku. I thought you needed a hug. Keigo smiled at her, while also crying. He was moved by his daughter's actions. Kaho was also crying, touched by this moment but also sad from what she heard. But she already knew that this match was over, and so she announced the winner because clearly, Kendo wouldn't continue fighting. Itsuka Kendo forfeits. Izuku Midoriya wins, Kaho announced. Izuku's eyes widened and he began to shake. Damn it, he thought. I didn't win. I failed. He looked down before finally the pain from his burns caught up to him and his knees buckled and he went limp. If it wasn't for Kendo, he would have fell face first into the mat, which was quite hard for a mat. We should get you treated, Kendo said to Izuku, before carrying him out of the metal cage, and he looked down. I didn't win, Izuku muttered, still feeling pathetic for winning by a forfeit that wasn't even said. And it pissed him the hell off too. You're right, Kendo replied, having heard what Izuku said, which turned his attention to her. But it wouldn't be right to fight someone who's already injured. My pride as the best in my dojo prevents me from hurting you any further. I hate you so much right now, Izuku told her bluntly. Well, it's worth it if it means getting you treated as soon as possible, Kendo said, before she set him down on a bench. And the medic they had hired to come heal anyone who had gotten hurt during the competition came over and began to heal Izuku by holding their hands over Izuku's burns, which healed up slowly. Kendo walked away, sat down on a bench on the opposite side of the room, and sat with her knees up to her chest, a clear indicator that she needed to be left alone, and so her dojo mates and her father left her alone. She had a lot to think about right now. An hour or so later, when everyone was heading home from the competition, Kendo lingered, waiting for Izuku, who was currently getting bandaged by the medic. She heard that he would apparently be needing to stay away from any physical activities for the next few days, or even the next week depending on how he acted. She heard a door open, and Kendo raised her head and saw Izuku walking towards her. They were silent as they stared at each other. Kendo finally decided to say something. Hey, she managed to say, though that was all she felt like she could muster right now. Hey, Izuku replied. Kendo bit her lip. How should she proceed? So, I'm sorry for making you feel like I was taking pity on you. Izuku looked away, which made him seem cold, before he said, I should also apologize. He looked back at her. I've been a bit cold lately, because I've been trying to prove that quirkless doesn't mean worthless. He sat down next to her on the bench. But I meant a lot of what I said earlier. What happened back then? Kendo asked. Izuku was silent, before saying, I don't want to really talk about it. But let's leave it at I've been having some nightmares recently about back then. Kendo looked down, before pulling out her phone and going to her contacts. If you need someone to talk to about it, call or text me, Kendo told him, before handing him her phone, which had her phone number on display, which shocked him. And I would like to spar with you again too. She blushed a little, but it was faint enough to where Izuku didn't see it. Kendo thought he didn't at least. Though he did and was just choosing to not make a big deal out of it. You're really strong. Izuku wasn't exactly sure how to respond, so he simply said, thanks. They went silent while Izuku entered Kendo's phone number into his phone, before Kendo got up. I'm gonna go, she said. Izuku then gave her her phone, and she left. While Izuku sat there for a few moments, he eventually thought, for someone who's so strong and kind, you would think she'd have more friends. He got up, before dialing a number and leaving the building. When the person on the line picked up, Izuku asked, is the recruitment still gonna happen? Yes, it is, came the voice of Kurajiri. However, there is something that I should tell you. What? Izuku asked, curiously. Your tech experiment worked. Izuku's eyes widened, before he smiled, and he began to laugh. So it is possible, Izuku said excitedly while smiling. I can make nanotechnology. Katsuki Bakugo. I hope you're aware of why you're here, asked the detective in the interrogation room of the police station, right next to Aldara Junior High, only 2 blocks away. I am. An almost emotionless and blank-faced Bakugo answered, his face being blank like a doll, showing no emotion right now. Well, let me recap what I've gathered anyways. The detective pulled out a piece of paper and placed it on the table before reading from it. You attacked a fellow student in the same class as you with your quirk, in front of the whole class, and in front of the teacher at the same time before leaving the classroom, using your own quirk to slightly damage yourself, and nearly committing suicide before a hero stopped you just in time, and you deliberately attacked that same hero who tried to save you with your quirk again. The detective looked up at Bakugo. Is this all true? Yes, Bakugo said, not even bothering to put up a fight. Can you tell me why you attacked your classmate? The detective asked. He provoked me, even if it wasn't directly at me, Bakugo said, his breathing starting to turn uneven. The detective was silent for a moment. What did he say? Then Bakugo began shaking. I don't want to say. His eyes began watering. I can't. Hey, calm down, the detective said, realizing something was actually seriously wrong with Bakugo. Take deep breaths. No, Bakugo said before placing his hands on his head and curling into a ball in the chair he sat in. It's all my fault. It's all my fault. What's your fault? The detective asked. I killed Izuku, he shouted before slamming his head into the table. I fucking killed him and it's all my fault, damn it. He started shaking more violently and he started crying. It's all my fault. What? Who is Izuku? The detective asked. The only person who matters, Bakugo muttered as he cried. The man who actually does something. The only one who actually cares. What are you talking about? The detective questioned. What do you mean? I heard Izuku. For years, Bakugo said. All because of those damn bastards. Who? Those damn extras. Those damn bastards who call themselves human when they bullied the shit out of Izuku. Bakugo shouted at the detective. And they tried to get to me. Bakugo buried his face in his legs. They nearly killed me. What are you talking about? The detective asked, actually concerned about Bakugo's mental stability. Bakugo said nothing before he lifted up his shirt. And the detective saw a nasty scar that covered over where Bakugo's heart must have been. There were stitches all around it, and it looked like it had been there for years. Did your classmates do this to you? The detective asked. No, I don't know who, but someone related broke into my house to do this to me, Bakugo said. They left me alive though. But if I told anyone, I would die. That they'd fucking kill me. This kid, is he really the supposed bad guy here? The detective wondered. And then, they forced me. Bakugo began to breathe even harder in between his sobs. They forced me to hurt him. Bakugo looked up at the detective. They made me tell him to forget his dreams of proving them wrong. What have they done to you? They broke me. That's what. Bakugo laid his head on the table. I can't stand them anymore. Bakugo raised it and hit his head on the table hard, a loud thud being heard. I want to die, damn it. Before the detective could speak, Bakugo continued. I want to burn in hell for what I've done to him. To Izukumidoriya. I want to die at his hands. I want to cease to exist in this cruel, pitiful, helpless world. He started slamming his fist on the table as he cried. I want to take it all back. I want to tell him the truth, damn it. What did you want to tell Midoriya? The detective asked, before Bakugo raised his head and told the detective the honest truth. The words he could never tell Izuku. I love Izuku, and I want to die for what I've done to him. After the interrogation was over, Bakugo was left in the interrogation room while the detective walked into his office, where All Might in his true form, otherwise known as Toshinori Yagi, waited, hoping for some information from Bakugo. Did we learn anything, Naomasa? Toshinori asked his detective friend. From what I can gather, Bakugo is 100% innocent, Naomasa replied. Turns out, his classmates were forcing him to comply, otherwise they would get someone to kill Bakugo. It's honestly a bit bizarre. He has a scar over his heart, and a nasty one too. It's a miracle he's still alive, especially from how old it looks. He's probably had it since he was 9, maybe 10 years old. Damn, that kid's had it rough, Toshinori commented. Did we find the source of his trauma? Well, when you had us conduct a secret search for a green-haired, average-looking teenage boy, we ended up with nothing since we weren't going by the books for it or going through any records for the boy, the detective began. However, after interrogation, we can conclude that the boy you were looking for is named Izuku Midoriya, and Bakugo also happens to know the boy. Really? All Might questioned. We know where he is, assuming that the Midoriyas live in the same apartment that they did 9 months ago, possibly, Naomasa said, but in the state the kid's in. It's almost understandable that therapy hasn't worked. Therapy? Toshinori questioned. Yes, therapy. Naomasa sat down in a chair, and he had a good therapist too. It's sad. He's been through so much. and he's convinced that Izuku Midoriya is also dead because of what one of the students said, but I get the feeling that it's a lie on the student's part. Needless to say, we need a pro hero to stay and watch the Bakugos over these next few days and conduct a thorough investigation on some of the students at Aldara Junior High. Yeah, some of them are indeed rather suspicious, especially for deceiving young Bakugo and nearly killing him to send him a message. All Might agreed. But is young Midoriya actually dead? No, we did a search on quirkless teenagers within the databases, and the status of Midoriya is that he is alive, Neomasa replied. But you'll need to hold off your search for him, just so you can help Bakugo out. Ah yes, Toshinori said. Young Bakugo needs help first. We can find young Midoriya later. So, how are you going to help him? Neomasa asked his friend. Simple, Toshinori said. By telling him the truth. Wait, what? Neomasa questioned. Bakugo lifted his head up as he heard the door to the interrogation room open, and he looked to see the detective walk back in with a man who looked like a walking skeleton. Thank you for your testimony, Bakugo, Neomasa told Bakugo. From what we can gather, your testimony was all true, which I could gather thanks to my quirk, lie detector. Bakugo's eyes widened. However, we would still like to ask about Midoriya. First, allow me to introduce myself, the walking skeleton began. I'm Toshinori Yagi, but you would know me by another name. Suddenly he transformed into the shining symbol of peace. You would know me as All Might. Is this a joke? Bakugo questioned. No, it's not, Neomasa told Bakugo. All Might reverted to his true form. Now, I would really appreciate your help, young Bakugo, concerning how I have been looking for young Midoriya these past few months, and so far, you are my only lead to him. All Might sat down and looked at the emotional boy. Can you please help me? Why? Why do you need Izuku? Bakugo asked. I suppose I should start from the very beginning, All Might began. You see, I was once quirkless, just like young Midoriya. Bakugo's eyes widened, surprised that the strongest man on Earth used to be quirkless. But I wanted to become a pillar of hope for the people of Japan, and I wanted to be a hero, just like many people out there. All Might then grew serious. Then, a miracle had found me in the form of my predecessor, who was my teacher before she passed away while fighting a villain. She then chose me to bear a power that had survived for generations. All Might said. And that is my quirk. One for all. One for all. Bakugo repeated. Yes, I am the 8th user of One for All Might continued. And I have been looking for a successor for a few years now. However, when I decided that I would have young Midoriya, the simple, quirkless boy, be my successor, I couldn't find him. The press sadly kept following me, and I couldn't find that boy before my time ran out that day. Your time? Yes. All Might lifted up his shirt to reveal a wound that was implanted where his lung would be. I got into a fight with a villain 5 years ago. Well, almost 6 years by now. He destroyed most of my respiratory system and nearly killed me. Right now, I can only be a hero for 3 hours a day. What? A villain like that exists? Bakugo exclaimed. Ironically, he's the same person who made One for All. Toshinori continued as he let his shirt fall down, covering the wound again. He's been around for years, and he's one of the most dangerous villains on this planet. To him, you're but an insect. The symbol put his hands on the table. I chose Midoriya to be my successor, because I see that he's a worthy successor of my quirk, and I believe that since he's also so intelligent, he could bring All for One down, once and for all, after some training of course. All for One. Wait, is that the name of the villain? Bakugo asked. Yes, All Might said. I have a shaking suspicion that All for One is still alive, and that I didn't kill him. And should that be true, I need a successor in case I fall to him. I'm finding this a little hard to believe. Bakugo wiped the tears from his face. This All for One guy just sounds like a final boss. And a quirk that can be passed down is also hard to believe too. And you're All Might. There is no way that you, a walking skeleton, can be All Might. Would you care for me to demonstrate how strong I am and how I am All Might? Toshinori asked. I don't believe you, Bakugo simply said. This here table is made from steel, All Might said as he transformed. And for a normal human, this table is damn near impossible to move, break, or crush. However, All Might placed his hand on the table and pushed down on the table, crushing it like it was a simple toy structure made from building blocks. As the symbol of peace, this is easy to crush. All Might transformed back and coughed up some blood. Do you believe me now? Bakugo's jaw had dropped. I do. Then please help me find young Midoriya. All Might grew slightly serious. Please, I too need to right the wrongs I committed against him, crushing his dreams like a hypocrite. I can't face him. Not yet, Bakugo said while looking down. Not after what's happened. I understand, All Might said, slightly disappointed but still understanding since he had a somewhat similar childhood from what it sounded like Izuku had, except it was less violent towards him. But, the past aside, I want you to attend UA High School. Wait, what? Bakugo questioned. You see, I'm going to be a teacher there, and I want you to be there so I can talk to you and you can talk to me. I understand how hard life can be. I've seen what many bad choices have done to people in the forms of the villains I've fought. All Might said, I want to help you out. And then I want to help you so you can overcome the past. All Might looked at Bakugo determinedly. What do you say? I'll think about it. Bakugo answered. I still have a lot to think about. Very well, All Might said. This will conclude your interrogation, Naomasa told Bakugo. In the meantime, please consult your therapist. And if you want us to help you, Naomasa pulled out a card with his contact info on it. Please give us a call. All Might pulled out a card of his own. He was silent before placing down an item that made Bakugo's eyes widen. If you do see Midoriya, give it to him. Bakugo looked at All Might before slowly nodding and putting away the mysterious item. With that, Bakugo left the police station, and Naomasa and All Might sat alone in the interrogation room for a moment. I really hope we can help him, All Might said. Further reason to convince Nezu about having the dorms at UA, Naomasa replied, making All Might nod. I'll bring what we found out today to Nezu, All Might told his detective friend. If we're lucky. He looked at the chair Bakugo was sitting in. We could help Bakugo overcome his trauma. Too bad we don't really have the resources video games do, Naomasa said randomly. I don't get it, but okay. All Might left the police station shortly after and looked at the sky. I wonder what Night Eye is gonna think about this. Kurogiri, how is Izuku's training going? All for one asked Kurogiri with the use of a monitor from the Symbol of Evil's room that connected to another TV that was in the basement of the League of Villains hideout, which was also where they had installed a little training area for Izuku to train in. Kurogiri looked away from the monitor and back at Izuku, who was in the process of murdering another Namu with a knife, this one increasing the dead Namu count to roughly 20. He's coping with his rage. Why do I get the feeling you're not telling me something? All for one asked. Because he keeps killing our Nomus and he doesn't look like he's gonna stop anytime soon. Kurogiri answered as Izuku finally ripped the head off of the Namu he was stabbing to death. Die 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 die. Izuku chanted as he killed another one. Fucking die, damn it. All for one went silent on his side of the line. Eventually, he spoke and said, tell Izuku to clean himself up and to get ready. We need to go try and recruit the people you suggested the other day. You mean the Shy Hasekai? Kurogiri asked. Yes, them, All for one confirmed. Plus, it would fit our goals to have more people join us, even if it means referring to the Yakuza ways. Or Mafia ways, since that's what my brother used to call it. Right, Kurogiri said, before All for one ended the transmission. Kurogiri looked back at Izuku, who was attempting to calm himself down as he stopped killing some of the Namu. Just what the hell made Izuku so mad? Izuku. Kurogiri began as he entered the same room as Izuku after exiting the observation room that overlooked the training room Izuku was training in. Hey Kurogiri, Izuku greeted before he took off his blood-stained shirt and threw it aside, the burns on his body not showing any change since the tournament. And also a few more cuts were on his body from the training with stain that he had on Saturdays and Sundays. I'm done venting my anger now. This was you venting? Kurogiri questioned as he looked at the 30 or so Namu that were laying on the ground. All of them dead. Yeah, Izuku said. A girl made me really mad at a tournament my dojo held with 3 other dojos. Don't ask, cause I kinda feel like killing some more Namu now. Well, your childish venting can go on hold, because Sensei wanted you to get ready, Kurogiri told the quirkless genius. It's time to recruit the Hasekai for our cause. Already? Izuku asked, a little surprised. Okay, I guess I'll go get ready. He walked out. Have fun cleaning up, Kurogiri. Kurogiri remained silent, before he looked at the corpses of Namu and sighed. Why does this job always fall to me? And then he began to clean the mess up slowly. God, he hated getting blood in his portals. A few hours later, Izuku was in his villain outfit, which was a typical black suit, though he wore a white shirt under a black vest which gave him a bartender appearance, topped with his mask. He entered the bar of the League's hideout and saw Shigaraki was also in a suit, though he still wore his family's hands all over him like normal. All for one was sitting on a stool as he waited for Izuku before standing up and looking at his 2 figurative stepsons. All right, are we ready to go recruit the Hasekai? All for one asked. I'm ready, Deku said. Though should they try to make any attempt to kill you, the deal is off and I'm slicing off their arms. Fair enough, All for one said, before Kurogiri reappeared though his mist looked a bit more red. All for one looked at Kurogiri. Teleport us. Hold on, do they even know we're coming? Shigaraki asked, which stopped All for one, Kurogiri, and Deku in their tracks. The 3 villains were silent, so we have made no efforts to try to warn them ahead of time. I thought Sensei would have done something since I've been too busy trying to keep up with school and my martial arts classes, Deku admitted. I was going to, but it slipped my mind, All for one said. Screw it. Brava. There was a moment of silence before they heard some running from another section of the building before the door to the upstairs of the hideout, which also happened to be where they were housing the other members of the league, opened and showed Brava, who heard her name being called. Yes, sensei. Brava asked. Can you find the phone of the leader of the Shy Hasekai Yakuza group and send him a text? And tell him we wish to talk. All for one asked. I can try, but I make no promises, Brava said before closing the door and running back to her room. Suo. Deku looked at his villain friends. What now? Well, we could always try and look for other potential candidates in the meantime while we wait for Brava to find the leader of the Hasekai's phone and text him, All for one said. Izuku slowly smiled. I might have a candidate then, he stated mysteriously. Izuku stepped into a house, exiting one of Kurogiri's warp gates, and he looked around, noting the blood on the walls and the trail of it on the ground and the flickering light overhead. He looked down and realized he was stepping in a pool of blood. Before he closed his eyes and breathed in and out for a moment. 1, 2, 1, 2. Izuku tilted his head to his left, which let it dodge a knife that got thrown at his head before he dropped to the floor instantly as another got thrown at his back. Before he rolled and hit the wall as a third was thrown at where he was just laying. He pushed off of the wall and then off of the ground and got onto his feet, before focusing on his air slice and deflecting several knives that were being thrown at him before they stopped coming. I mean you no harm, Deku said as he stood straight. You lost wolf. I'm a wolf. The voice of his target, a female that was roughly his age, questioned as she stepped out of the shadows, the light no longer flickering. His target was none other than Himiko Toga, who looked at him with a great interest. Now that's odd. No one has ever called me that. But your quirk relies on blood. And wolves kill their prey and feast on their fresh corpse with the blood staining their teeth, Deku explained. I know a wolf when I see one. And it's obvious you are one. Himiko Toga. Who are you? Toga asked Izuku while picking a knife off of the ground. I go by Deku, Izuku answered. And if you want my real name, you should join the League of Villains. That way, you can be free to do as you please. And we can help you out with some of your issues, especially your lust for blood. How do you know I like blood? Toga asked. She gasped randomly. Have you been stalking me? I put pieces together, Izuku said. Your victims don't have a lot of blood left in them when they're found. And you have blood on your teeth and your face, like a vampire. True enough, she did. And with a quirk like yours, it makes sense. Consuming blood to become someone must come with an addiction. And why should I trust that you won't turn me into the police? Toga questioned. Izuku sighed, before he pulled out a small bowl he had on him, one that would contain a shot glass worth of wine or liquor. He walked past Toga and Toga turned around and saw Izuku kneel by the corpse of her latest kill, before pouring some of the victim's blood into the cup. He stood up and faced Toga. This is my proof, Izuku said. My sake cup if you will. He took off his mask, but only slightly so she couldn't see his face that much before he drank the blood of her victim. When he finished, he threw the bowl aside and looked at her. Does blood taste like salted water to you or is that just me? Toga giggled hysterically, a faint blush appearing on her cheek. Oh no, it's not just you. But I kinda like it that way sometimes. This guy's blood just tastes that way though. Must have something to do with the fact he's in his 30s or something. She walked to Izuku. Okay, I'll join you, Mr. Deku. All right, Deku said. And, don't call me that. It doesn't sound right for my senior to call me Mr. Wait, you're younger than me? Toga questioned, before Deku shrugged. Yeah, the smart quirkless Deku. The age of a middle schooler that's almost a high schooler, so shocking, he said rather dryly, waving his hands in mock surprise when he said the last bit. Kurogiri's warp gate opened up and Deku nodded his head towards it. Come on, I got some more people to recruit today. Okay, Toga said cheerily as she skipped through the portal with Deku following through, before they entered the League of Villains bar and the warp gate closed. Mission success, Deku said as he took off his mask, not bothering to wipe the blood on his cheek. Why the hell is there a blood stain on your cheek and around your mouth and teeth? Shigaraki asked as he paused the video game he was playing and looked up at Izuku. I drank to symbolize my promise that she's one of us now, Izuku said. What did you drink? Kurogiri questioned. And why do I feel like blood crossed through my portal? Deku drank some blood to symbolize his promise to me, Toga said with a smile. And he called me a wolf too. The two villains were silent before looking back at Deku. Izuku smiled. I needed to get on her level to show her we're trustworthy. Also, the reason you feel that way, Kurogiri, is because she brought a vial of her latest victim's blood with her. True enough, Toga did. Oh, come the hell on, Kurogiri shouted before he growled and teleported away, heading to the showers to try and wash the blood off of his portals. 3, 2, 1. Izuku counted down before they heard some yelling from upstairs and Kurogiri came back out of the portal, now looking more pissed off than he did a few seconds ago. 5:40 p.m. when Gentle takes his afternoon shower. I hate you, Kurogiri grumbled. Anyways, Izuku began as he started walking to the upstairs of the hideout. Come with me, Toga. I'll be showing you where your room will be and asking some questions. Okay, Deku, Toga said as she followed Izuku. As they left, Shigaraki smirked. Watch, they're gonna fall in love and have a weird-ass relationship within 1 month. Since why the hell would that work? Kurogiri questioned. Since I managed to predict that the guy in my latest game who looked like the final boss wasn't the final boss, Shigaraki began. And that this one police guy also would join my party. And damn, he had a sick-ass awakening. Shigaraki went back to playing on his Nintendo Switch, which Kurogiri just shrugged off and teleported elsewhere to wash the blood out of his portals. This will be your room, Izuku said as he opened a door and showed Toga her room, which was lightly furnished with only the necessities of a bed, a desk with 3 drawers for whatever Toga saw fit to store in them, a chair for her to sit in while at her desk, and a medium-sized closet to store her clothes. Wow, this looks nice, Toga commented before going to her bed and laying on it. She smiled contently as she let out a relieved sigh. So nice. We may run on a low budget, but we do at least try to make sure our members have a cozy living space, Izuku said, still sounding formal like normal. You can drop the whole formal act. I don't really care about formalities or whatever, Toga told Izuku, which made him sigh in relief. Good, cause I don't know how much longer I could keep it up, Izuku said. So, what's your name? Toga asked, remembering Izuku's promise. It's Izuku Midoriya, Izuku answered. But remember, don't tell anyone outside of the league or the people we can't or don't trust. I imply this only to protect my mother. Izuku looked down. She needs to stay safe. Okay, Toga said simply, not really seeing any reason to argue. Now, I want to ask a few questions, Izuku stated as he pulled out a notebook and a pencil from his jacket and sat in the chair by Toga's desk and looked at Toga. What is your quirk? And in detail explain how it works. My quirk is transform, Toga said. I can consume someone's blood and transform into them. And depending on how much of their blood I drink, I can transform into them for a long time, and sometimes a few days if I drank all of their blood. I don't know how long exactly I can be someone, but I do know that if I drank a full cup of their blood I can be them for a full day. Like a measurement cup, or a drinking cup? Izuku asked. A drinking cup, Toga said, before tilting her head to the side and placing a hand on her chin. I think, she shrugged. I do know that if I drink the blood of multiple people I can transform between people. I can't copy their quirks though, so it's really only useful for disguising myself. I see, Izuku said. My next question is how do you manage to sneak up on people and kill them? If I think about absolutely nothing, if I don't breathe, and if I just let my body move on its own, I can turn invisible until I breathe again. Or if I think about something, Toga answered before sitting up and suddenly staying still before she disappeared. Amazing, Izuku whispered to himself before he felt something lick his cheek and he looked to see that Toga was next to him and was licking the blood off of his cheek, which freaked him out before he scooted the chair back a bit and Toga snapped out of a daze and looked at him and giggled. Sorry about that, Toga said. I got a thing for blood. And I just really wanted to lick it off of your face before it dries up or you wash it off. I see, Izuku said, stopping his hand from going to his cheek and wiping off the feeling of her tongue licking the blood on his face. He blushed a little bit, before calming himself down a little bit. Do you have any allergies or quote-unquote issues that I should know about? No, Toga said quietly, though Izuku didn't hear her. Can you repeat that? I didn't catch that, Izuku said. No, I don't have any allergies, Toga repeated. Izuku stood up and walked to her. You like blood because of your quirk, don't you? Toga looked away, not answering him. I'm assuming it comes with an addiction. Why does it matter? Toga suddenly shouted before she pulled a knife out of her pocket and tried to stab him. Izuku dodged to the side, but it stabbed him in the arm, and he grimaced before jumping back at the door and held his now bleeding arm. You're just gonna think I'm a psychopath now, aren't you? Like everyone else. I don't think that way, Izuku shouted back as he pulled the knife out of his arm. I am not like all of those scumbags. And how am I supposed to believe that? Toga retorted, as she pulled out another knife and lunged at him and tried to stab him again. Because I am quirkless, Izuku shouted as he appeared in front of her and grabbed her neck and slammed her into the ground, his rage leaking through and seeping into the other rooms, and everyone in the hideout feeling his rage and stopping what they were doing as they felt their heart rate speed up. I know how shitty this fucking world is more than anyone possibly could. Izuku glared at Toga now. You want blood? Izuku reeled his hand with the knife back and stabbed his arm, cutting it open before the blood from his arm spewed all across her face and the floor, before he shoved his bleeding arm up against her mouth and began to drown her in his blood. Then drink up, bitch. Toga did begin to drink, but because she felt like she was suffocating from how bitter and sour his blood tasted from the intense pressure of rage she felt, before she began to cry as she tried to breathe, but to no avail as he practically began to drown her. What's wrong? The fool, Izuku said viciously as he grabbed her neck with his good arm and threw her at a wall, before Toga stared at him like he was insane. Oh, don't stare at me like that, you bloody psychopath. Who are you? She muttered as she began shaking out of fear. I'm Deku, Izuku repeated with an intense rage as he stood up slowly. And I'm gonna destroy the society we know. He walked up to her and grabbed her neck again and lifted her up and against the wall. Now here's my final question. Will you join me? Or will you rot as I destroy everything? Toga was shaking too much and couldn't breathe before she managed to say, why yes. Izuku let her go, and she fell to the ground, the intense rage pressure leaving the building as he dropped her. Now understand just who you're working with, and remember that I will lead the abused, the mutated, and the powerless as I kill All Might with my 2 bare hands. Why? Why did you do that? Toga questioned as she caught her breath and he turned around. The blood. Why? It's because I wanted to reach an understanding, Izuku stated as he looked back at her through the corner of his eye. I help those who deserve it. You needed it. That, and I'm feeling a bit pissed now. He left her room, and Toga finally collapsed as she hugged herself, but then felt his blood on her hands and she looked at the blood, before giving into the urge to suddenly drink up the blood and clean herself, before her eyes rolled back into her head as the blood tasted much sweeter without his bitter rage scaring her. Yeah, she's falling in love with Deku, and she is more scared about it than anything. After Izuku got himself cleaned up for more reasons than others, he got dressed into more casual clothes as he went to his next destination, an amusement park, as Izuku walked around and tried to blend in by buying some candy and then playing a few games. He eventually came across a large commotion and gathering of people and saw his target. And for my next magic trick, I shall stop this Ferris wheel. The target shouted as Izuku spotted a Ferris wheel rolling around. The large metal pole that should have held it in the ground apparently damaged and people were still trapped in the carts of the Ferris wheel. The target himself ran towards the Ferris wheel and stood in its path, and as it touched his outstretched hand, it suddenly disappeared. He turned around and held out a marble. Behold, the Ferris wheel in the marble. A group of the people watching began clapping, but Izuku looked back at where the Ferris wheel should have been, and he knew instantly that this was set up and that someone had tampered with the Ferris wheel. And Izuku knew where this was going. After the Ferris wheel we returned to its normal size, and all of the people safely evacuated from the inside of the carts that held the people. The bystanders gave him lots of money, and a few even gave him a load of the tickets for the prizes at this amusement park. Before the target Izuku was after went into a trailer and was left to his own intentions. Not that he knew what was about to happen. 50, 60, 70. The magician counted before he smiled from under his mask and placed all of the yen he had received from the civilian. 100,000 yen. A good haul indeed. He looked at the reels of tickets and estimated that he had enough to buy one of the top 10 prizes, which consisted of roughly 100,000 or so tickets, but not worth it in the end. Still, it was a good haul. Amazing how gullible people can be. Amazing it is. Atsuhiro Sako, came the voice of Izuku, before Atsuhiro looked over and saw Izuku leaning on a desk that had a package of apples on it, of which he took the liberty to take an apple and eat from it while the magician looked at him in shock, and was about to compress him into a marble, before Izuku lifted a finger and swallowed a bite of the apple he was eating. Sorry for barging in, but I needed to talk to you. About what? Being a member of my act, Atsuhiro questioned before slipping his hand into his pocket and grabbing a marble which should have a sword in it. I don't really need a sidekick for my act, since my tricks are quite personal. I want to invite you to the League of Villains, Izuku interrupted suddenly, which made Atsuhiro stop for a moment. A master of deception should use his gifts to do as he sees fit, especially since you want to make your granddaddy proud. Atsuhiro's eyes widened. How does this teen know who his grandfather was? Who are you? Sako questioned. Izuku chuckled a bit. I'm the quirkless villain Deku, and I want you to join my party, Mr. Compress. He took another bite of the apple and hummed as he chewed. Yo, these apples are really ripe and juicy. Where did you get these apples? I got them at a farmer's market a while back, Compress said casually, actually thinking the invitation over. Nice. You should tell me where it is and I can get Kurogiri to pick up some fruits and vegetables from it when he goes out shopping later, Izuku said. Compress simply nodded, before they heard some running from outside, and he sighed. Well, I guess the cops have arrived. Guess it's time to go. Mind if I show off my own magic trick? Izuku asked Compress as he pulled out his own mask, this time it being a full-face mask. I thought you were quirkless, and is every magician a one-trick pony? Touche. Outside, the police and several heroes had gathered outside of the trailer that would be Mr. Compress's hideout, which was hidden in plain sight, along with a bunch of civilians who wanted their yen back. This is the police, one bold officer shouted through a megaphone at Compress's trailer. Come out with your hands where we can see them. Compress opened the door and held his hands out in front of him. Why, this is quite the paparazzi. Does everyone want another magic trick? He was met with a shit ton of boos, and he chuckled. Well, I can show off another trick. Behold, my quirkless wonder. He showed off a marble that suddenly appeared in one of his hands. before he threw it forward and snapped, before Izuku in his villain outfit appeared with his hand outstretched. Fire! Deku shouted as flames appeared on his hands, and he shot them towards the heroes, and it hit them as they staggered from his sudden appearance. A small explosion kicked up, and then he jumped back before looking at his hand and made it into a fist, wincing from the burn he felt. Gonna need to fix that when I modify the Nano-S later, Deku thought as he looked at the now unconscious heroes, who were all slightly charred but not dead. Deku smiled while Mr. Compress turned his trailer into a marble and Kurogiri opened a portal. Deku walked through it, but Compress took a bow before he threw out a final marble and snapped, all of the tickets donated to him being thrown into the wind and into the audience. I enjoy your donations, but that is one donation I can't accept, Compress stated. See you if there ever is a next time. He then entered the portal as well, before it closed. Alright, mission successful, Izuku announced as he appeared in the League's bar, Compress following shortly after. I get it that villains can do what they want, but a miner in a bar, Compress commented. First time for everything, I'll say. This is just a hideout and a way to gather funds, Kurogiri told Compress while he polished a shot glass. Deku here is simply using this place as a rendezvous for when he completes one of his missions at a time. You were his target, and he brought you here. So I was a target. For what? For recruitment, Izuku said to Compress as he took off his mask. We need skilled people like you for a stunt that we're gonna pull later on. And as such, we need someone like you to help us with that. Especially since your quirk is perfect for an experiment I want to try out, but more on that later. Izuku walked to a door and opened it, the door leading to all of the rooms that the respective members of the League lived in, at least when they were in the area. Let me show you to your room for when you are here. Very well, Compress said as he followed Izuku. Once they entered the room, Compress whistled. Nicely furnished. Compress didn't know it, but his room was furnished the same way as Toga's, minus the bed sheet colors, the room wall paint, and also some of the positions of the furniture. Well, yeah, Izuku said. We need our guests to have at least some form of comfort, even if funds are low as is. But enough formalities. Izuku pulled out the chair from behind the desk. I would like to ask some questions. Well, why not? Compress said as he took off his hat and mask, but not taking off the masking that hid most of his head. I can already guess what your quirk is, Izuku stated as he pulled out his notebook and flipped to a page which had a bunch of data on Mr. Compress, and while Compress couldn't make out most of it, he knew that it was highly accurate and detailed. It allows you to turn anything you touch into a marble. However, I don't know how much you can compress at a time, or if you have a limit for how many marbles you can make, or if you have a certain weight limit for what you can compress. Why, I can compress however much of anything I want at a time, Compress said. For instance, I could place a hand on your arm and I can turn all of you into a marble, or I could just turn your arm into a marble and make a bloody mess of your corpse. Well, that's enlightening, Izuku sarcastically jokes. Is there a weight limit by any chance? Not that I know of, considering I turned an entire Ferris wheel into a marble, Compress stated. I also do know that I don't have a limit for how many things I can compress at a time. I just turned it into a marble. And that is that. Izuku that the end of the pen he had onto his chin as he thought to himself for a moment. You have a strong quirk. Really strong. Well, yes, Compress agreed. It makes me strong in the first place. I'm not really a good fighter or anything, since I rely on deception and mind games to fight. Yeah, Izuku closed his notebook. Okay, that will be all that I wanted to ask you. He stood up and pushed the chair back under the desk. Feel free to come and go from this location as you please. The League is your family now. And we're here if you need us. Okay, I'll keep that in mind, the magician said as he gave Izuku a thumbs up before Izuku nodded and exited the room. As Izuku left the room, he saw Toga waiting for him outside of her room. And it took him a lot of willpower to try and not look mad since he remembered what happened early, before Toga called out to him, still covered in his blood. Izuku, Toga called out playfully. What do you need, Toga? Izuku asked through gritted teeth, so his anger didn't seep into his question, though Toga only blushed, though it looked as if it were the drunk type of blush. Can you help me think of a good way to suppress my lust for blood? She asked suddenly, which made Izuku stop for a moment. I already thought of a way, but I want to see what you think first. Izuku grunted and checked the clock in the hallway. He would have some time before he left to recruit the next potential member of the League. I guess I can help you. Yeah. Toga grabbed Izuku by the hands and brought him into her room, which made Izuku's eyes widen from how energetic she was acting. Okay, so here's what I was thinking. Well, Toga, first off, calm down for a moment, Izuku told her as she let go of his hands and started fidgeting with her skirt. You're acting like you were on a sugar rush or blasted with steroids. I probably am on a sugar rush, to be honest, Toga told Izuku before she began giggling. Your blood is Ali sweet. Izuku paused for a moment as he processed that, and then she continued. So, here's what I was thinking. She walked up to him and put her nose against his nose and smiled creepily. I want to be just like you. I want to be you. And I want to have your blood. So I was thinking that every few days or something I could get some blood from you, so then I could reel in my urges. Okay, are you sure you're okay and not high or something? Izuku asked, actually concerned at this rate, before she bit his neck, and he almost kneed her stomach, but she pressed up against him, pinning him to the wall, and she bit him harder and pierced his skin and into his blood canals, which made him yell out in pain for a moment as she drank his blood, before she stopped and looked at him drunkenly. Toga put a hand on Izuku's cheek. You're mine, Toga told him, while Izuku stared at her like she was crazy since she was fucking nuts, and also scared for his well-being. She went to her bed, and Izuku darted out of the room quickly, and headed to the bar to get bandages. After several moments of bandaging and also reassuring All for One and Kirigiri, Izuku was teleported to his next location while wearing his villain costume, before entering a part of an underground fighting ring in the stands where many villains sat as they watched the ongoing death match unfold. Izuku watched as his next target pelted their opponent with a barrage of lightning-fast blows, which brutally bloodied the fighting ring and also the target's opponent, who was either dead or unconscious judging from the snapping of the bones in both the torso and the other limbs. This is pathetic. The target shouted from where he stood in the ring, his voice muffled from his mask that he wore. Someone come and provide me with a real fight. I'll do it, Deku shouted, which made all of the villains in the target turn and look at him, before a lot of them started laughing at him while the quirkless teen walked down to the ring and jumped in. The target laughed. You've got spunk, kid. I like that. But get out of the ring. You can't provide me with a death match. You're just some scrawny kid. Sounds like someone scared of a quirkless teenager, Deku retorted, which made some villains go oh in the audience. Why does it matter if you kill a kid? You've killed dozens and didn't give them a chance to escape instead of taking them on instantly. Why am I different? Because I'm quirkless. The target grunted. You don't look like you can put up a fight, quirkless or not. Well, looks can be deceiving. Or are you just being a fucking pussy? Several more villains OOOOD in the audience, before the target smirked from under his mask. Fine, if you're so confident, I'll take you on. Just don't go crying uncle once you're dead from Kendo Rappa, the strong-armed brawler. Rappa immediately lunged towards Izuku while his fists began to rapidly go back and forth in punching motion. Izuku smiled, before dropping to the ground, on his toes and hands before jumping forward at Rappa's legs and tripped Rappa. Before Rappa was face first in the ground and Izuku jumped onto the brawler's back and had his blades appear and lightly touch Rappa's neck, slightly cutting through the tough skin. Funny, looks like you should be saying uncle, or maybe nephew, since you just got bested by a minor. The stadium was silent as Rappa laid on the ground, his life flashing before his eyes before Izuku began to talk some more. Don't get me wrong, I kinda hate you for thinking I am not strong, but I get where you are coming from. Once I kill All Might, I'll give everyone who challenges me a chance to flee, before I break their arms and legs and leave them crippled, also taking their power to speak while I'm at it. But I came here to recruit you. Recruit me? Rappa questioned before Izuku got off of him. Someone of your caliber would make for an excellent soldier and weapon in battle, Izuku said. Your strength is amazing too, hence why I came to recruit you. You'd be a perfect asset to the League of Villains. Plus, you can still come here whenever you want. Fine, but I'm leaving once I beat you, Rappa stated as he stood up. I'm going to best you, and show you why I'm the greatest brawler in this ring. Fair enough, Izuku said, before he suddenly was in front of Rappa and he had 2 fingers to Rappa's chest, before he punched Rappa and sent him into the stands. Also, you never surrendered, so the match was still going. Rappa's body only went limp in response. Oh wait, you can't hear me. You're unconscious. Izuku laughed before lifting a hand into the air. Villains, the time has come for the death of All Might. And soon a new era will begin. An era without All Might. The villains began cheering, solely because they were excited and energetic, and also because All Might's disappearance sounded pleasing. However, Izuku said, the League of Villains cannot do this alone. We need all of your help to make this dream come true. Now then, Izuku threw both of his hands up. Who's with me? All of the villains cheered. And Izuku laughed with them, before his eyes came across someone that he recognized and his eyes widened as he looked at the men he was looking at. So, the Yakuza like to watch death matches? Izuku questioned. I didn't expect that from the leader of the Hasekai and Chisaki. No, I did not. Kai Chisaki wasn't open about much to others, but he was open solely to the boss of the Hasekai. When he told the boss he was interested in death matches but more importantly the participants, the boss was concerned about Chisaki, especially since the young Yakuza was a germophobic and there would be a lot of blood, especially in a not-so-clean arena. However, the boss decided to go with Chisaki as a way to see what Chisaki was looking for, since he felt like there was another reason for this. However, what Kai Chisaki didn't expect was a quirkless teenager to waltz into the arena and win a fight without anything resembling a weapon. But he won against the most brutal of fighters, as if Rappa was nothing. And to recruit the man he was looking to recruit too. As the boss of the Hasekai and Chisaki left the compound, the same quirkless teen came running up to them. Hey, please wait. the quirkless teen said. The boss and Chisaki stopped and looked at the quirkless teen. What do you want? The boss asked. Chisaki's subconsciousness grabbed the rim of his glove, ready to kill the quirkless teen on the spot when the teen held his hand out to Chisaki. I know what your quirk is, so don't bother trying, he said. I just wanted to talk. About what? The boss asked cautiously, while Chisaki looked at the boss, confused. It's about an alliance, the teen told them. My name is Deku, but don't let that deceive you. I want to form an alliance with the Hasekai. An alliance? With a villain? Chisaki questioned. I heard rumors about a Yakuza gang plotting to make a drug that could erase quirks. This caught Chisaki off guard and his eyes widened. Also known as the Shy Hasekai. The boss looked at Chisaki. Didn't I already tell you to stop with that idea? But boss, it's the only way we can survive. Chisaki told the Hasekai's boss. This kid clearly knows about it, and it's obvious he's interested in it. The moment we do that plan is the moment we abandon gangster chivalry, the boss told Chisaki. But, now this is interesting. The quirkless teen butted in, which reminded the two Yakuza about his presence. Talk about gangster chivalry. Normally, chivalry involves the opposite gender, or females. So obviously, the teen's eyes narrowed at Chisaki. You're exploiting a female to make these bullets. To gather that much from very little information, the boss began. Means you're intelligent, despite it actually meaning that we abandon honor as Yakuza. I'm the brains of the League of Villains, the teenage villain said. I earned my spot for a reason. I need to use her to make the bullets, boss, Chisaki said, trying to convince the boss again. He also gets this, he's quirkless himself. You will not use my granddaughter for this plan, Chisaki, the boss said, raising his voice a little. This is the last warning. Granddaughter. The quirkless villain looked at Chisaki. You're using a little girl. Her quirk is perfect for this, Chisaki told the teen, feeling compelled to speak to him for some reason. Her quirk can rewind things into a previous state, or to a point where the quirk factor is gone. She can rewind people into monkeys if she used her quirk correctly. So let me get this straight. You're using a little girl and her quirk for this project? The teen asked. Yes, this was the only way to make the drugs to destroy the quirks. And then we'd make the cure for it and rule the underworld in the biggest pyramid scheme possible. Chisaki finished. We are not doing this, Chisaki. The boss repeated. She's a little girl. Boss, this is the only way. Chisaki retorted to the boss, before they both heard the villain start to chuckle, which confused them. The villain started laughing more violently and smiled under his mask. If this is the way they're being made, with a quirk, then an outcome can be made, with the girl being used very little. Huh? Chisaki and the boss questioned. Well, it's a quirk being used, right? The villain repeated. I have the resources to make artificial quirks if my latest experiment with my tech works correctly. So if I were to have a blood sample of the girl, I could make an artificial quirk that would still work like hers. Assuming my experiment works, that is. Really? Chisaki asked. Of course, the villain said. After all, he looked at them with a sinister sincerity in his eyes. I work under the mighty All for One. All for One? The boss questioned. He's alive. All Might have bashed his face in, which was the initial reason I followed you guys to recruit Chisaki so he could restore his face, but he's still alive and kicking. The villain said. I go by Deku for my villain affairs, and I want to form an alliance with the Hasekai. As such, if you help us out from here on out in our alliance, when Japan's under our rule, you guys get your own fair share to rule. I swear on it. You swear? Chisaki questioned. Sounds like someone is trying to be convincing. On your honor as a Yakuza, Izuku said. Risky move, the boss said. But, fine, I'll think about it. If I say yes, expect to see me here tomorrow with Chisaki. At 10:30 p.m., Deku asked. Yes, the boss said. You may refer to me as Dawn for now. You don't get my name yet, I still don't trust you. Fair enough, Deku said. Now, we'll see you tomorrow. Maybe, Dawn said, before he and Chisaki left. When they left, Izuku smiled and slightly cheered for himself, proud of his accomplishment that might work, but he was certain that they'd join them. He texted Kurogiri and he left for the bar again. Did you really do it? All for One asked while Izuku ate the dinner Kurogiri made for him. Did you seriously recruit the Hasekai? We'll find out tomorrow at 10:30 p.m., Izuku told him as he ate at the little island in the bar, Kurogiri polishing a shot glass. He wasn't the only one eating dinner made by Kurogiri, which consisted of fried rice with some chicken to go with it. Everyone recruited to date was in the bar eating dinner, minus Stain, who was out on his typical purge, and Rappa, who was unconscious and at his home. Well, this should be interesting to work with the Yakuza, Gentle commented as he finished eating his dinner and wiped his face with a napkin. Hopefully they'll be okay and not assholes, Shigaraki added. You'll manifest that if you think about it, Izuku told Shigaraki, which made him scowl. Yeah, right, Shigaraki replied, not believing it one bit. Well, I still think that this is a pretty nice place to lay low, Mr. Compress said, looking around the bar. Plus, the food is really good. Thank you, Kurogiri replied, taking a little pleasure in the compliment. Well, I know something a lot better than this dinner, Toga said, before looking at Izuku somewhat drunkenly, which made Izuku choke on his food a little since Toga was beginning to make him scared. But only a little. From what I heard about you, I don't think that could be true for the rest of us, Compress said, before he continued eating his dinner. Anyways, I learned something very interesting, Sensei, Izuku said to All for One as he turned to look at the TV. And what is that? All for One asked, before everyone heard what sounded like eating noises on the other side of the screen. I learned how the Hasekai were making the bullets that were rumored to be made in the underworld, Izuku said, which caught everyone's attention. Sadly, it pisses me off a little since they're using a little girl to do it. A good portion of the still-eating members began to gag on their food, Gentle spitting out his tea since he was taking a sip of his tea at the same time. That clearly didn't sit well with any of them. A little girl, All for One questioned before he coughed a little. That's nearly inhuman. Keyword, nearly, Izuku said. They're exploiting her quirk, which can rewind people to a past state. That itself is cool and all, but using the girl herself to make the bullets isn't nice. So I extended a new part of the offer other than letting them rule their own part of Japan. What's this offer then? Shigaraki asked. Everyone looking at Izuku now with great curiosity about this added offer. We help make the bullets by cloning the girl's quirk, Izuku began, and then put it in a Namu who will listen to us and Chisaki. That way, we build trust between us and the Hasekai. So should I stop trying to find the boss's phone? La Brava asked Izuku. Yes, Izuku told her, which she nodded and pulled out her laptop and stopped the search. Needless to say, this will be a little exciting, having a supply of quirk erasing bullets on our side. All for One said, we need them to build trust with us first, Izuku reminded his uncle. Otherwise we can kiss those bullets goodbye. Yes, doesn't mean I'm not excited though. All for One made more eating noises. Well, anyways, I'm gonna head home, Izuku told his allies. Kurogiri, warp me back please. Yes, Kurogiri said, before he opened a warp gate to the front door of Izuku's apartment where he lived with his mom. And Izuku left for his home, and Kurogiri closed the portal behind him. I wonder what Izuku's family is like, Toga said randomly. Izuku's family is just him and his mother, All for One said, answering Toga's unasked question. His father walked out on him as soon as he was diagnosed as quirkless. Compress looked at All for One's screen and his head tilted to the side. That's not the whole story, is it? All for One went silent. It isn't. Izuku himself doesn't even know the truth about that bastard. Whoa, Sensei cussed, Shigaraki exclaimed, actually surprised. This is something serious. It is. Now drop it, All for One said. Bring this topic up to Izuku and I will do more than just hurt you. The League felt the pressure in All for One's words, which meant he wasn't kidding about doing more than hurting them. It actually scared most of them how menacing All for One's words sounded and the aura that followed them. Oh okay, Toga squealed in fright, but still really curious. Everyone eventually went to bed, while All for One began to remember the fallout that actually happened before Inko and Hisashi got divorced. He growled in frustration. If I ever see that bastard, I'm going to kill him, restored face or not. The next day, Izuku was with his mom for the day, trying to spend some time with her since he spent a long time with the League and he felt like she needed some love and attention, especially now that his plans were getting too deep to back out of. Needless to say, he was determined more than ever to change the world. Izuku, sweetie, you don't need to give me so much attention right now, Inko told her only child as he made her lunch. Please, let me help you with. Mom, I got this, Izuku told her politely. You've been doing a lot for me. It's time I did something for you. He looked back at the ham he was chopping with a kitchen knife. Especially since I'm gonna change the world. Inko knew he was still trying to be a hero, but that last bit didn't sit well with her at all. Izuku, I know you still want to be a hero. But, my mind has been set, Izuku interrupted. I'll change the way this world sees things, even if it means I do die in the process somewhere along the way. Izuku accepted that his death was inevitable. He always had, but he was going to change the world first before he died. I'll at least give the quirkless some hope, even if just a little. His mom couldn't help but smile. She hugged her son, which caught him a little off guard. I'll support you all the way, Izuku, but just don't overdo it. Izuku looked at his mom and gave a small smile. I make no promises. After they ate lunch, which included ham and some instant mashed potatoes, Izuku was washing the dishes and loading them into the dishwasher before he got a call on his phone, which confused him since he told the League in their group chat they had not to call him today under any circumstances. The only exception was All for One calling him, in which it was serious. Izuku put the plate he had in the dishwasher before drying his hands with a rag, seeing that Itsuka Kendo was the one calling him. He completely forgot they exchanged phone numbers. The quirkless teen turned to look at the trophy that he won, which reminded him that he lost that day, though officially he won. After a little bit of mental work, he picked up the phone and answered the call. Hey, Izuku said, not exactly knowing what to say. Hey, came Kendo's voice on the other side of the line. If it's not too much to ask, I want to meet up somewhere. It's about the tournament. And bring the trophy too. Izuku already knew where this was going. A rematch, Izuku thought. Fine by me. Need a secluded place? He asked. Then I recommend Dragaba Municipal Beach. It's secluded and no one is actively gonna want to go there since the place has been trashed. Sure, Kendo replied. It's just 30 minutes by bullet train. I think I got enough money to get there and back. Alright, see you in 40 minutes, Izuku said, before he hung up without any hesitation. He looked at his phone and sighed. I wonder what this is gonna be about, he said randomly, before finishing up the dishes and excusing himself from the house for a minute, then proceeding towards Dragaba. When he got there he waited 10 minutes, before growing a bit bored and pulled out his phone and started to sing to himself while listening to a song since it helped him sing a bit better while he waited. He finished a song when he felt that he wasn't alone, before looking behind him and seeing Kendo in a trench coat jacket to block out the cold air, while also wearing earmuffs. Izuku went silent as he looked at her. She looked at him before looking to the side, until she looked at him again and gestured to the trophy. Can I see the trophy? This caught him off guard, but he assumed she was gonna put it somewhere and they were gonna duke it out before the winner would take it home. As such, he gave it to her and she held it in her hands, looking over it. What he didn't expect was what actually happened. Suddenly she broke it in half, which startled him, before she crushed it and threw it into one of the piles of trash. Izuku was left speechless as he stared at the gold-painted foil for what was the trophy. What? Izuku finally said. Sorry, I just felt like you'd want to destroy that thing since it served as a reminder in your house about your win, Kendo said with little emotion as she brushed her hair to the side. Izuku looked at her like she was insane, before realizing that she herself didn't feel right with leaving him have the trophy. She didn't want it either, but it confused him why she wanted to destroy it. As Izuku began to think about it, he finally found a reason. Did you want to destroy it? To forget about their bet? Izuku asked Kendo, which made her flinch as she remembered the bet that was almost made back at the tournament. It haunted you that much? Kendo looked away, unsure what to say. It might have. Nice to know I wasn't the only one who disliked it, Izuku said, before a sudden breeze came and blew through the trash, making the metallic rusty trash whistle. As Izuku's cost fluttered, he looked at Kendo and realized she clearly wasn't doing well with the cold right now, before he hummed. You look cold. Well no dumbass, Kendo retorted, a little irritated. Don't be like that, Izuku said before he had some of his nano-s show up and light themselves on fire and made a small little fire that he then pulled out an old chair and sat down by. Kendo was surprised. But you're quirkless, Izuku finished with the questioning tone in his voice. Maybe, but that doesn't prevent me from making tech now, does it? This is technology, Kendo questioned as she looked at the flames that weren't even fueled by anything other than the tech they originated. It's really complex, Izuku stated. A support guru would understand this, but since you are more of a martial arts person, this wouldn't exactly be the easiest to explain. Because I'm all brawn. Is that it? Kendo questioned. No, it's just really hard to explain without having to make this sound like a lecture, Izuku replied. He stood up and the flame followed him. Come on, I'll take you to the station. Unless you want to spar. Maybe a different time, Kendo said while holding her shoulders and shaking. Izuku was silent before the flames lightly surrounded her so it looked like her cost was glowing but not setting it on fire. There, Izuku said as Kendo warmed up. Whoa, she mumbled, impressed. These things are amazing. Thanks, Izuku said, taking a little pride in the comment. They began to walk to the station, before Kendo began to try to start a conversation. Hey. She looked at Izuku who had his hands in his pockets, a scarf he wore covering his mouth. So, about the tournament. Izuku looked at her now and she looked away, nervously. I'm sorry for not just taking the win. Izuku looked away now. I know I did the right thing, it's just, you know that it hurt me mentally, Izuku finished. Kendo was silent and was blushing a little. Why yeah, and, I do want a rematch. This time, no rules will stop us until one of us is unconscious or surrenders. Fine by me, Izuku said. But just know, I'm not the same as I was back then. I didn't think you were, Kendo said with a small smile. They arrived at the station, and Kendo began to leave before Izuku thought it was his turn to ask a question. Before you go, Izuku said suddenly as he looked her in the eyes. Tell me, why didn't you have more friends on your contacts? He felt something was wrong about that. Seriously wrong. Kendo was silent before giving him a smile and closing her eyes. I just got my phone back then, so I didn't add everyone yet. That's it. She walked away and waved bye and left to go home, but Izuku sighed. That wasn't the truth. 10:30 p.m. came, and Izuku was waiting with All for One and Kurogiri at the place where Izuku and the Hasekai left before the 10:30 p.m. mark would come. They're not here, Kurogiri said. Well no Izuku retorted. Just give them a moment. The other two were growing impatient, but Izuku knew they were impatient to begin with. And Sensei was in a bad mood for some reason too. Eventually, they almost left when they heard footsteps and Izuku turned to see Dawn and Chisaki back with a little girl who looked albino with her white hair and red eyes, topped with a little horn on her forehead, who clung to Dawn's leg. Izuku smiled. "We accept the alliance between us, the Shy Hasekai, and the League of Villains." Today marked a day before the entrance exam of UA, and Izuku decided that since tomorrow was a big day, he'd take the day off from his usual villain agenda and test his skills, by which he was going to get the long-fated rematch he knew Kendo was wanting. But also, he'd test something else on her. After getting permission from Sensei, Izuku and Kendo went to the building of which the martial arts tournament they both fought in was held, and it was just them. Izuku had arrived, but he still had some time before Kendo would arrive. As such, he began to mentally assess her fighting posture and the different forms she had used during their match, recreating the fight with his Nano-S so he could see how everything went down, play by play. It wasn't long before he could predict a foreseeable outcome in each move. Izuku then received a text from Itsuka, saying that she'd arrive within 5 minutes. That was fine with him. Now, let us raise the stakes, he thought, before he took off his gi shirt, leaving him in just his gi pants. As he did a few stretches, Izuku noticed that he didn't feel as much pain now when he did his pre-battle warm-up. Am I healing? At this moment, he heard the door to the room open and close, and he turned to see Kendo, who was staring at his scars. It clearly pained her to see them again, as she lifted her hand to her mouth and began to tear up. Izuku sighed. This is gonna be a long day. Why, you never got them healed? Kendo questioned, and Izuku sighed again. I keep them as a reminder, he told her, which surprised the martial artist. But enough of that. Get yourself ready. I want to get this match over as quickly as possible. All right. Cause of the pain, Kendo assumed. No, I don't give a damn about the pain, Izuku replied as he began to do a few leg workouts. It's about something else. Kendo was left confused as she went into the locker room to get changed, and Izuku went into the caged fighting ring. The moment of truth would come. Very soon. Is he insane? Kendo questioned as she entered the female locker room and took off her coat and looked through her bag for her dojo's uniform. What is so important that he needs to get the match done with quickly? Is there something else going on with him that he didn't mention? Not only did Itsuka grow more concerned for the quirkless teen, but she grew more confused and pained internally. Her dojo friend had told her about what she's heard of Izuku before he moved to a different school district, and what Itsuka learned wasn't pretty in the slightest. Kendo huffed in frustration before she stopped herself from slamming her own head against the wall. It wouldn't do her any good, nor would it help Izuku. It didn't help that she was worried that Izuku would just collapse any moment because of his wounds, and it didn't help that she had to fight him with those wounds. What kind of monster does that to someone? Bakugo, clearly, Itsuka's mind thought, which just aggravated her even more. She took a few moments to calm down and finished putting on her uniform, before walking out of the locker room and into the fighting room, and she saw Izuku waiting in the cage, his eyes closed in deep thought with his arms crossed. How the hell does he get in the cage? Izuku suddenly told her as his eyes opened and fell upon her, showing a cold, almost blank look which made her feel more uncomfortable than she already did. But she did what he had told, and his arms fell to his sides. All right, now I'm going to put a bet on the table now. Wait, what? Kendo thought, not only surprised but startled. If I lose this fight, then I'll tell you my truth, Izuku told her. Not just about my scars, but how I made the Nano-S, and I'll tell you about why I want to enter UA. The whole truth, nothing short of it either. The way Izuku said it, it sounded like he didn't actually want to tell her anything, but he was going to so that he had a bet, and this only spiked her curiosity further. Okay, she said, and if I lose, I get to ask 3 questions. And you'll tell me everything I want to know about said questions, Izuku replied, which also means the whole truth. Kendo's eyes widened as she didn't see that coming. Oh okay, she said, accepting the bets, despite how she didn't want to say anything either. Fitting bets. All right, let's fight, Izuku said suddenly, before the 2 teenagers entered their fighting stances, before jumping at each other and began to launch their various attacks at each other, from jabs to grabs that resulted in more dents in the metal cage from the force projected by them. Izuku entered an unfamiliar stance that made Kendo jump back at the last second as he began to shout the name of one of his new attacks. Chimera, Chimera, Kendo thought in surprise, before he suddenly went on all fours with his legs more closer to the ground before jumping into the air towards her while somersaulting. And as his back was turned towards her, the female fighter felt something bite her wrist, before pulling her forward and her getting hit by a kick to her head as she fell to the ground, Izuku landing right in front of her, a small amount of blood staining his foot. Serpent's mark, Izuku finished, as Kendo looked to see what looked like a snake bite on her wrist, which scared her for a moment. Relax, it's not poisonous. I mimicked a bite, that's all. I think I got a concussion, Kendo commented while Izuku grabbed her and threw her into the cage again, and she fell limp for a moment as her body grew numb from the neck down. Sorry, did I say it's not poisonous? Izuku questioned rhetorically while he walked up to her while emitting a cold aura. I meant it's not lethally poisonous. The hell? Kendo questioned. How the hell did you do that? Simply twisting the grip of reality. That's all, Izuku stated. If you pressed onwards and kept attacking, I wouldn't have been able to paralyze you. But however, you played into my trap. Or my move. Calling it a trap wouldn't really be a right way to describe it. More like, my test. Your test. Kendo looked on in confusion, since she didn't know much about Izuku's attacks. Testing things on objects is pointless, Izuku began. How do I know if the paralysis I'm inflicting through my chimera fighting style will work if I'm fighting a tree? Or a garbage can? Fighting something human, like you, works perfectly for a test. And this was just a theory I thought of last night when I was practicing my chimera fighting style. Kendo gritted her teeth, kinda mad now. So you called me here, to be a test subject. I wanted an honest match with you, Izuku replied while closing his eyes. But I never specified anything against using the fighting styles at our disposal. Like your Nano-S, Kendo accused. I have pride too, you know. Izuku shouted at her instantaneously, which shut her up. Do you think that I would use those in an honest match against you? Sure, I want to know the truth, and sure, I want to help you, but why would I forsake my damn pride in doing so? Izuku glared at her, and Kendo averted her eyes in shame. HMPH. Kendo felt something inject into her neck before she suddenly left her body again, the numbness fading. I'm crazy, or psychotic as some would say, but I'm not heartless. You want this as your win then? Kendo assumed. No, Izuku said, before punching her in the face. He turned away and began to walk to the exit of the cage. Okay, now it's my win. After a few moments of silence, and then changing into normal clothes and Izuku bandaging Kendo, they sat down in the lobby, which was empty, just like the rest of the building. So, your questions, Kendo said, not trying to avoid what was to come and still mentally preparing herself. You lied about the new phone thing, Izuku stated. What's the truth behind the small number of contacts? By it, Kendo looked down at the ground. It's a really long story. Are we talking emotionally scarring long, or anime side characters long? Izuku asked to keep it simple, which in turn confused Kendo. Both, Kendo answered unsurely. Okay then, Izuku began. If you could show me the scene that led to this incident, would you let me see it? And even if you couldn't, would you at least tell me what happened? Itsuko was confused by this sudden addition of questions, which seemed damn near impossible to show him since. It also seemed like the questions were involving trust, which in retrospect just showed how much he wanted to either help or know her. Didn't say she didn't trust him, since he at least seemed concerned, and he went to the point of curing her paralysis, which confused her even further as to how the hell he even made a working cure for paralysis, especially since it'd be labeled as making drugs. But even then it wasn't exactly certain there was a working cure publicly released to cure paralysis. Kendo looked down. I couldn't. Regardless of your answers, what I would do doesn't change, Izuku replied, before she felt his hand on her head and a sudden jolt of what felt like electricity, mixed somehow with the burning sensation of fire. The coldness of winter if one was in a bathing suit. Before she began to scream at the top of her lungs in agony, and she began crying and trying to remove Izuku's hand from on top of her head. Izuku's heart hurt more than ever to see Kendo as she was, screaming for mercy, but he knew it was part of the process. Visualization, the trauma within. He shouted as the room changed, and the electromagnetic pulse that stuck Kendo to him faded, and she fell to the ground as the world seemed to shift, and Izuku turned around to see someone crying. I told you this was gonna happen. A younger Kendo told this person, another girl with light blue yet also somewhat light green hair, who was crying as Izuku walked on to see what was going on, before quickly identifying that this was during her early middle school years. I told you he was toxic. What does this mean? Izuku wondered as he continued watching. Shut up. The other girl shouted at the younger Kendo. He's just pranking me. Would a prank go as far as taking what you said mattered to you? Kendo retorted. He ruined everything you had. Shut the hell up. If you knew this, why didn't you try to stop him? The girl looked less like the victim she was playing out to be now and began to look agitated as she walked up to Kendo and began to yell at her more. Aren't you supposed to be some sort of karate prodigy? The girl eventually hit Kendo with a slap that Kendo didn't see coming. What happened to us being best friends? Kendo remained silent before looking at this so-called friend of hers. Kendo was crying now, her eyes now turning red as tears came out of her eyes. Her sad, serious, and also mad eyes. Right, I'm the one who did this. And yet I so vaguely remember you said that you'd be fine. Kendo pointed her finger at the girl's chest and poked it. You told me that he wouldn't get to you. That he wouldn't break your spirit. You told me that you wouldn't let him drag you into despair. Shut up. The girl then sent out a shockwave with her quirk. And while Izuku couldn't feel it, the younger Kendo did, and she got sent into a wall. Shut up, shut up, shut up. The girl looked beyond pissed before she began to hit Kendo with her own fists. And by the time she was finished, Kendo was bleeding and had bruises all over her face. "I'm through with our friendship. Well, I don't recall us ever being friends to begin with," Kendo shouted at the girl before the scene shifted, which surprised Izuku. The room changed to Kendo crying in her room, which seemed to reflect her personality. A punching bag, a desk for study, a shelf that had different trophies from different tournaments, a bunch of bronze and silver trophies dominating the shelf other than the sole gold trophy that was at the top, which seemed most recent in the time of this trauma. Izuku saw the younger Kendo scrolling through her phone, evidently the same one she had now, though back then it appeared she had a sticker of a pro hero that Izuku recognized as a professional martial artist on her phone. She was deleting contacts on the phone. And as Izuku looked on, he saw that she was receiving hate messages from the people she no doubt used to hang with, and she cried and sniffed while deleting them from her contacts. That bitch, the younger Kendo muttered to herself, before she lingered over the name of the last contact she had in her contacts, which was no doubt a female name. Izuku could have sworn the last name was familiar, but before he could think any further on it, she deleted it. Kendo crawled into a ball. I'm such a bad friend." The scene ended there, and the room shifted to normal as if nothing ever happened, with Izuku standing up straight before looking at the real Kendo, who was crying and whimpering while on her hands and knees on the ground. "So, that's your trauma," Izuku commented, before walking up to her. "Why?" Kendo questioned. "Why did you have to remind me? You think I know about your crap childhood?" Izuku said. "That right there, I could tell it's fucked up, and I could tell you were betrayed by your own best friend. She began to spread lies, hence why you were deleting all of your contacts, minus the ones I recognized as your father, presumably your mother, and a few other important people, which is quite similar to your contacts now." Izuku kneeled next to her and hugged her, which shocked Kendo. "Your past, it's quite similar to mine, except less fucked up," Izuku told her, before the hug tightened. "It actually pains me more than hugging you right now how similar our social lives are." He let go of her and saw she had calmed down a bit. "Tell me your side of the story." She was my best friend," Itsuka began. We were friends for 5 years, before she got a boyfriend. He was a part of a Yakuza gang, one that showed no mercy to innocents, and they do whatever the hell they want. "Damn, talk about abandoning gangster chivalry," Izuku muttered. He made no efforts to hide it, and I found out eventually, while they were dating. He was lying. Itsuka looked Izuku in the eyes. He didn't give a damn about her. Kendo hugged herself. He stole stuff that was important to her. Her baking trophies, the only photo of her dead father, even as far as destroying her favorite stuffed animals, when she led him over to her house. And I warned her and she blamed me for what happened. "You were trying to look out for her," Izuku said. "Okay then, what happened afterwards?" "She spread lies about me," Kendo said. "And because she was high up the social ladder, it worked despite how it was all lies. Even my friends turned against me." She cried a little more. I don't have any friends at school, only the ones in my dojo. And even then, they're not really friends. They just see me as a big sister figure." Izuku hugged Kendo again. "I'm sorry you were betrayed. You must have been very lonely as a result." Izuku was indeed sorry, and was touched by her story, and he actually shed a tear because of it, though he was trying to remain expressionless as he watched her trauma unveil. "I'm so sorry you lived through that with no one to truly talk to about it." Izuku, Kendo began crying more and hugged him tightly, which in turn hurt his scars, but he would manage as she buried her head into his shoulder. "It's not fair. Why was it me? Why did I lose my friends?" Izuku hugged her more tightly and began to stroke the back of her head. "This world, it's cruel. There is no such thing as being fair. And for the most part, villains lurk everywhere. But the most cruel ones are those who use people as puppets." Izuku knew the League wasn't like that. They had an honest friendship going on. In fact, they all were betrayed by society in some way, shape, or form, and it amazed Izuku that Kendo didn't succumb to any negative temptations. But he knew that she at least had a family she could cling to, who would keep her from doing anything rash, and the ones that discard people who were honest friends to them over something trivial. That, he added, because he still hated Bakugo and lumped him and Kendo's friend together in that category. "The second question," Kendo mumbled, which Izuku barely caught. "Crap. Didn't think this far," Izuku admitted, which made Kendo chuckle a little. Which of your parents did you get your quirk from?" "My father," Kendo said, which confused Izuku. "But he's quirkless," Izuku said. "That's what I always say to him. But he rambles on about how his quirk got stolen," Kendo replied, which made Izuku's heart drop. "That, or his quirk got destroyed somehow. Though his quirk factor is still there. Uncle did this," Izuku thought at first, while his face changed to pure despair at the thought, before he regained himself. "Oh okay. Maybe he somehow got a quirk suppressant implanted into his body so it's stopping him." "Yeah, that's what I think," Itsuka replied. "Final question," Ask me one question, Izuku told her, which was out of the blue. But Kendo had one question that came to mind first and she blushed. Did you like me? Kendo asked shakily, which made Izuku turn beet red, before Kendo blushed even more. Izuku looked to the side, unsure how to answer. How did he really feel about this question? Did he really like her, or was she just a friend? Izuku didn't even know, since much thought hadn't been given to the topic of dating since he stamped that topic out a long time ago when Bakugo and his cronies played a prank on him that made his trust towards his schoolmates deteriorate like ceramic pots falling off of a 50-meter-high building and shattering. Okay, let me rephrase that. Kendo grabbed his shoulders and looked at him. Would you go out with me? Izuku's heart dropped even more at this, before he said, I need tea time to think. Fair enough, Kendo replied, before grabbing her bag and leaving the building, Izuku leaving shortly after. Izuku thought about it for a moment, before he realized something grave and important, and he stopped walking. Holy shit, Izuku mumbled. I'm into different girls. Today was Izuku's day, and he would rock it harder than anything his nano-S could form. Alright, I'm going to be heading to UA, guys, Izuku said to all of the members of the league, who were all in the bar to see him off as he stood by the door, his backpack being held in one hand as the quirkless mastermind looked at the people he considered family. Everyone was here, all gathered to see him off for his plans and for their reality. Tamura had even put down his video games for once to see him off, despite how distant he was from everyone. Compress wore a new mask, with fake tears drawn on to represent the feelings Compress wouldn't physically express since he never took his mask off for them to see. Kurogiri remained silent, but his pace in cleaning the same wine glass was much slower than normal. Stain looked at Izuku with a smile, proud of the boy for what was to come, which made Izuku proud, seeing as the man was one of the only few he'd call his father, all for one being the only other person. Gentle and Librava were in casual clothes for once, the two also looking proud of Izuku, and for all the reasons that Izuku knew about. Rappa was silent, but Izuku could sense that the Goliath was excited for a fight. Chisaki had even come to pay him a visit, though he was muttering about being closer to the infected, which Izuku knew was inevitable for the clean freak to say. Toga, or Himiko as they were on first-name basis since Izuku's encounter, with her instincts unleashed, was smiling and blushing next to the bar island while her hands were behind her back, and she looked at Izuku with a happy gaze, which Izuku was glad she had, despite how drained he felt after giving her blood donations. But that's why he's turning towards his darkest project yet, and it yields great results so far. Not that anyone knew about the project at all. Izuku, all for one, began. Despite the fact you're going close to that wretched fool All Might, and possibly putting your life and all of ours at risk, I want to say that even if you fail, I'll be proud that you tried. It takes a lot of courage to go as far as going to UA, and that's where the cream of the crop are manufactured. Izuku smirked. You act like I'm going to a sweets factory. Izuku looked at the monitor despite it being only voice chat. But, thanks uncle. Anytime. Just know we're still going to push you even further once you are accepted into UA, the criminal overlord replied. I accept. Izuku was about to exit when Tamura stood up and walked towards him. There was a long silence, and everyone knew as common knowledge and facts that Tamura felt jealous of his much attention Izuku was getting from his sensei, his father figure growing up, and it was obvious how much Tamura despised Izuku in the earlier months of them meeting, but had grown quiet in the recent weeks and seemed to be reflecting in recent days. The man-child, as the other members of the league but Izuku have come to know him as, looked at Izuku with an unreadable expression, before he suddenly wrapped his arms around Izuku and embraced him in a hug, which shocked all of the members of the league but all for one, who couldn't see shit. You aren't that bad, you know, Tamura said randomly, before letting go of Izuku and flashing Izuku a light smile. Maybe I was a little quick to judge you at first, and in fact I hated you. But, thank you, you're honestly really nice. With that random flash of character change done, Tamura walked away to where his room would be, and Izuku was shocked by the genuine affection Tamura showed him. Oh, okay, Izuku said with some uncertainty in his tone, before he opened the door and put his backpack on his shoulder, like an army shoulder leaving home to go to war. See you guys later, Toga began, before walking up to him and kissed his cheek, which caused him to blush because of how random that was. Okay, you can go now. That's it, the members of the league thought in response. Is there anything else anyone wants to do before I leave for the day? Izuku questioned while sounding very flustered. Break a leg, Compress joked, before Izuku walked out of the door and closed it shut. That's the best you got, Kendo Rappa questioned Compress. To be fair, we were just mainly teasing Izuku there, Gentle said. Or at least, all for one, Shigaraki and Toga. What do you mean? Toga asked Gentle. That kiss was just teasing him, right? Gentle questioned the teenage female. No, I meant that from the bottom of my heart. I really love Izu. Toga smiled. Oh, I can't wait for him to answer my question. What question? Chisaki asked. You'll find out. Toga then fled to her room upstairs, before La Brava brought up a topic that she could finally bring up. So, not to question Izuku's genius, but isn't the hero course exam for UA in 1 week? La Brava asked, which made all of the villains besides all for one pause. Was Izuku accustomed to lying now that he was a villain? Damn right he was. Of course it wasn't right to lie to his teammates, his family, but he knew that they'd find out eventually. Plus, he was still doing everything according to plan. Or at least, his master plan. But even they should have known today was the day of the UA support course entrance exam. Upon entering the train from Kamino Ward to travel to Shizuoka Prefecture, where UA was located, he found himself listening to the news that played on the train intercom as a way to pass the time. Before he began to listen to it with great interest as the report played out. Almost 12 bodies were totally burned by what looked like a hit and run. All of the bodies belonging to pro heroes who had a bunch of dark rumors circulating in both the public, the web, and also from what it seems the criminal underworld. Evidence of different crimes committed by the 12. Oh wait, it's now confirmed to be 13 heroes. But there was evidence of the crimes all 13 heroes committed which would land them 12 years in prison, but also the suspension of their hero license. Amongst these crimes are accepting bribes, abuse, a few murders of innocents that from the evidence gathered were all on purpose and seemed to relate with the past a lot for a few of these heroes, along with maps for the shipping of drugs that the heroes, or at least some of them, were going to escort. The drugs which are said to be Trigger would be shipped within a week of this hit and run. But it turns out the same perpetrator who killed these heroes destroyed the warehouse holding the shipment of Trigger, which was confirmed upon a thorough police investigation. We'll now go to Hanzai no Yokansha to see what's been found. Izuku grew interested now, before pulling up an article of the attack, and saw the handiwork of the new murderer on the loose, and already deduced this down to a flame quirk. A powerful one. The warehouse was nothing but ash now, even with its brick-based skeleton. Whoever was doing this was a vigilante, or was exposing the corruption in this world their way. But Izuku's question was who? This person caught Izuku's interest. Before reading further into the article and learning this attack took place over a week ago, 10 days before the exam Izuku would be going to today being February 19th. There were detailed notes on everything wrong in the hero's behaviors, which meant this person, or perhaps even people since it'd be easier to pull this stunt with a group, was observing from afar, and then placed the pieces around the board correctly before putting the false heroes into checkmate. What caught Izuku's attention even further was the terms of the heroes used by the perpetrator, using false heroes or filthy stains, and even as far as disgraces of the system, which showed a hint of anger in the last one. But Izuku could tell this person wasn't doing this just kicks, or themselves. They were a follower of Stain's ideals. A new recruit for the taking, Izuku thought with a cruel smile, already plotting this perpetrator's recruitment. Izuku sat back in his chair before he thought to himself, I wonder who was the man responsible for this. A man hummed after he got out of the shower and put jeans on before exiting the bathroom. His skin and hair mostly dry from using his flame quirk to dry himself off, while humming a rhythmic tune as strode to the dresser in the new house he's borrowing for the time being. He then grabbed a pair of tweezers from the shelf and grabbed a staple that held part of his skin together because of the burns he received when he was younger, the tune now sounding more violent. He then violently pulled on the staple and shouted in pain as he pulled it out of his skin, blood coming out of the newly opened wound. God fucking damn it. After arriving in Shizuoka Prefecture, Izuku began his mostly non-eventful walk to UA with his hands in his pockets. UA, Izuku said aloud randomly. He clenched his hands and wanted to punch something. Just thinking about it made him think of All Might, which made him want to punch something. Izuku grabbed his backpack off of his shoulders and pulled out a water bottle and proceeded to take a drink, chugging it halfway and was half tempted to crush it, but he knew it wouldn't do him any good. He would just have to deal with his situation for now. Put on his favorite act of playing innocent and kind. It's all for you, sensei, Izuku thought as he put on his best smile. It amazed him how easily it still came. Maybe it was because of how easy it was to lie about how he really felt for years. The times he's lied to his mother. All for why? Izuku felt a hand grab his shoulder before his training instinctively led him to grab the mysterious person's arm and twist it behind their back within the matter of seconds, and he gave it a rough pull. Judging from the black ski mask they wore and also the brief instant Izuku saw someone behind this person, they were trying to mug him in broad daylight, and his smile faded to a dark scowl. Back off. Wow. The criminal Izuku was about to break the arm of yelled. Their partner in crime's jaw dropping in disbelief. How the hell did he do that? The second mugger questioned. I'm trained to kill, Izuku muttered, practically spitting venom in his words from the amount of hate that dripped in his sentence, before he let go of the first mugger and began to walk towards UA. They didn't come after him. He would have beat them both senseless if they did. Eventually the young teen made it to UA, and was somewhat surprised to see that there wasn't anyone even around, and UA looked like a ghost town. It could be considered a ghost town because of how big the facility was, right? Izuku walked into UA, before following several signs and making it to a large theater area that he saw had only one other student, which surprised him that they were the only students so far taking the support course entrance exam for UA. It was immediately after he entered the room that someone else stepped in from a door close to the back right corner of the auditorium, who proceeded to walk to the podium in the back. Izuku recognized this person to be the excavation hero, Power Loader. "All right, young man in the back," Power Loader began while pointing at Izuku. "Yeah, you. Take a seat." Izuku did as he was told, and the hero cleared his throat and pulled out a piece of paper which was probably a whole script of what he needed to cover. "All right, before we begin, it's to be noted that there isn't many applicants this year. Normally, we'd have a lot, considering we're UA. But after that new fancy schmancy support course school opened 3 years ago, we've seen a decline in students for the support course. But this is the only time in UA history we're only seeing 2 students in a class. Minus Aizawa's, mind you." He cleared his throat and muttered a few things to himself while going over the list again. Izuku realized he was speaking out of line and he was trying to prepare himself for the actual speech. Did he seriously have bad stage fright in front of just 2 teens? Okie dokie. So in order to be accepted into UA, you must do 3 things. Power Loader raised 3 of his fingers. First, you must pass the written exam. This one is more difficult than any of the other exams here in UA. That's what the support course is after. The smartest, most responsible kids that are sensible enough to make proper gear that won't kill the user of it. And also because of how dangerous a lot of this shit can be. So, try not to make things explode. He coughed into his hand again. Second, you will demonstrate one or multiple of your gadgets to the 5 judges who will give you an approval rating between 1 star to 5 stars. Get an overall of 9 stars to pass that portion. Normally it would be 7, but since there are less students this year. Yeah. And the third thing we must do? Izuku asked Power Loader. The hero in return shook his head and said, "Pray to whatever god or gods you believe in that you succeed. Pray to whatever god or gods you believe in that you succeed." That stuck to Izuku as he walked onto the stage in another room inside of the school's grounds. After all, Izuku had never really been religious before in his life. He knew a lot about different religions, plus he's seen a few movies and read a lot of books. But the fact Power Loader brought it up just started this nagging feeling in his chest that just made him feel a bit hollow. But why? He shook the thought out of his mind and brought his attention to the judges he needed to impress. 3 males, 2 females. All of them looked like the sort of people he'd hate the most. Elitist scum who think themselves higher than everyone. And he knew this was a fact as he's seen them on TV before. Each was rich, had a tendency on heroes, and had dark secrets he dug into so he could destroy the fortunes of many of the self-caring people in the world. They were but 5 small pieces of the whole. These facts applied to them all, save one of them. "Hi there," Izuku said in his tone of voice that he used solely for greetings while putting on the brightest fake smile he could muster, which seemed to trick the judges as some also smiled back. "My name is Izuku Midoriya. It's nice to meet you all." "It's nice to meet you too, Midoriya," the first of the male judges responded. "I take it you wish to become a professional support designer." "I would like to, yes, but maybe as a side hobby," Izuku answered. "Sure, making gear for others sounds appealing and makes it seem like I'm helping someone out via the pro possessing my gear. It's not quite the same." Izuku started to fiddle with one of the gadgets he's brought that wasn't his Nano-S with a finger. His story needed to sound legit. "I do wish to continue making tech though, but I also want to help people on the front lines. After all, it's no good being a one-trick pony." "Oh, so true." The second judge, one of the females, called out and began to lightly laugh in a way that pissed Izuku off slightly. "Why don't we begin his examination?" The third judge, another one of the men, asked his fellow examiners. True, the first judge said. He gestured to Izuku, giving the teenage double agent the go-ahead to showcase his remarkably crafted gadgets. Izuku smiled and decided to lead off with the best of them all, his Nano-S. So, someone can't be in 2 places at once, save for people with clone quirks, transformation quirks, creation quirks that create false doubles that aren't alive in the slightest and are pale imitations of the real deal. Nor can someone just seem to make things appear though that's not their quirk. Upon this, Izuku began to walk across the stage, much like how a CEO would, and that's what he was aiming for. Now, he stopped and turned to face them while he clapped his hands together. People think they're limited to what they got. Well, that's the thing. Suddenly a car seemed to crash through the back wall of the stage and create a hole in the wall before hitting Izuku, scaring the judges in the process, but stopping as soon as Izuku went flying before another Izuku appeared, formed by what looked like black grains of sand. "They're not." Izuku spun his finger in the air counterclockwise, and what happened disappeared and turned into more black sand like grains. "Even someone with nothing special like me can make something revolutionary. Izuku continued before swirling his finger around again and making a large ball of his nano-S, which seemed to impress the judges once they've gotten over their initial scare. Behold, Izuku gave a sincere smile. My nano-S. Izuku made the nano-S swish back and forth, nothing but smooth movement coming from them which made him smile brighter. The judges were impressed by it as well, before Izuku made them catch fire. And why make them just a kinetic force, when we can use the elements given to us and make it more? They extinguished themselves, not creating smoke or steam in the process. The color of the nano-S that of embers before turning all black after a few moments of them cooling down. The future is when we want it to be. Izuku made the nano-S turn invisible as he walked to his starting point in front of the judges and had his hands together. I say the time is now. Everything went silent and one of the judges clapped. They then stopped as no one else began clapping. Izuku felt he must have impressed them and he smiled, proud of himself for a moment. This is interesting. The first judge commented. So, you integrated cloaking tech into your nano-S. Down to every last bead, Izuku answered honestly. However, should I die or they get EMP'd, then they'll all turn to normal and fall to the ground. At least that's my theory. I haven't died so I can't really test that. Nor have I used an EMP. Otherwise I'd have a lot of complaints from neighbors and my mom. So how do you control them? You don't have a controller or anything from what I've seen, the third judge curiously asked. Izuku tapped his head. I got a central control nano in my head. Or CCN for short, so I can control them with my mind. Izuku shuffled his feet sheepishly while looking down. Of course, this all comes down to prediction and a lot of programming, plus a lot of other factors, including coloring, integrating camouflage, making sure the images form correctly, and then trying to get the texture and feel of the object I'm trying to make real. For demonstration, Izuku made an action figure of All Might and gave it to the judges. After each took turns, they found the truth behind his words and saw that he could indeed copy the texture and feel for a normal one. Amazing, Judge 4, the other female judge, said. Before we cast our votes, the fifth judge, who was the other male judge and the one who clapped at first, began as he looked at Izuku with an interest. What did you mean by even someone with nothing special like me can make something revolutionary? Izuku sighed silently, hoping they didn't pick up on that, before saying, it's because I'm quirkless. The fifth's eyebrow rose in curiosity and astonishment that Izuku didn't pick up on, while the others looked at Izuku in disbelief. Yeah, I know, shocking, a quirkless teen made something so. I'm afraid we'll have to confiscate your nano-S then, the first judge interrupted, which made Izuku's heart drop a bit and accelerate. I'm finding it hard to believe a quirkless no one like you made something as advanced as this. But I did make it, Izuku countered while using his nanos to hide his twitching eye, which twitched in rage. What proof do you have that you made it? The third judge asked. What proof do you have that I didn't? Izuku retorted. Well, kid, in this area, it's our word against yours. The second judge began while drawing his attention. We decide your fate. That, and you won't get into any support schools if you were rejected by UA, especially with there being only one other student here. The fourth judge began to laugh. This conversation was beginning to piss Izuku the hell off. I give him 5 stars. Huh? Izuku was surprised and his nano-S faded before he looked at the fifth judge, who gave Izuku a confident smile. The fifth judge nodded with his eyes closed and held up a small sign that read 5 stars. He can make it far. I won't rob him of his chance to shine. Are you serious? The first judge questioned. We would be hearing something if a highly developed tech such as this boy's nano-S just went missing. And not to doubt the boy's mind. But how would he get into a high-tech research facility to acquire these nano-S, since the facility itself would have to have high security that would rival the prison over in Okinawa, possibly even Island, which would most likely be where these nano-S would be made. Nonetheless, this boy has quite a future ahead of him. The judges, minus the fifth, turned to look behind them as an unexpected guest appeared, and his presence shocked everyone in the room, minus the fifth judge. Principal Nezu. The judges exclaimed. Am I a dog, a mouse, or a bear? Either or, but it is I, your pal Principal Nezu, the high-specs hero and also one of the few animals to have a quirk, Nezu announced. Chimera, Izuku stated, which shocked everyone from the suddenness of his word. What? Nezu questioned. Chimera, Izuku repeated. If you're not one and just a bunch of them, then you must be a chimera. See, open thinking like that is what geniuses are about. Nezu smiled and the fifth judge helped Nezu onto the table for the judges. Thank you, my friend. No problem. Back to the point. I think you would make for an excellent student here, Midoriya. Nezu walked up to the edge of the table and looked at Izuku. Midoriya, you made something revolutionary indeed, and I think you would be at home in this learning environment. Nezu nodded. I accept you as a student. Hold on, that wasn't part of our deal, Nezu, the third judge said to the hybrid-like creature, before Nezu turned around and gave one of his serious and mad looks, which he normally never gave. And I never said that you can discriminate against potential students solely because this one happened to be quirkless like you did here, Nezu said. Our contracts are now terminated. You four should be ashamed. You damn rat. The first shouted before trying to hit Nezu. He was stopped last second by intense pressure suddenly interrupting him mid-punch, and he froze still, as did everyone in the room before the four discriminative judges turned to look at Midoriya, who was glaring at them with a harsh rage that spelt the message out to them just by looking at him. The fifth judge and Nezu were shocked at this development and also scared, as he has shown that he was harboring an intense rage inside of him that could even scare people his rage wasn't targeted towards. Run or this won't get pretty, Izuku growled through gritted teeth, before dropping the murderous intent he showed off, and the four judges began running while Nezu and the fifth looked at him with an interest that made it clear to Izuku that he was a man of interest. You are beyond interesting, the fifth judge said, his smiling returning. I'm 10 billion% confident that you'd make it well in this career. In fact, those nano-s you've demonstrated, Nezu began while very interested in them, would make for a very helpful item in the field of heroics. Izuku saw where this was going, and was surprised how quickly this was escalating. If you so wished for it, I could put you into the hero course. Granted, you'd still be a member of the support course, but I think I can see a way to make this cross-course student placement work. Izuku wasn't sure what to say. He was offered the opportunity that he'd needed for his plans, for his uncle's plans. Was it really so easy to deceive someone as smart as Nezu? But, after a moment of intense thinking and personal consideration, Izuku shook his head solemnly. I have to refuse. So you are looking to become a support master? The fifth judge asked. I do want to transfer to the hero course, but I'm going to do it on my own terms, Izuku explained. He placed his right clenched fist to his side and pointed to himself with his other hand's thumb and said, I'll prove I'm more than worthy during the UA Sports Festival, and no one will stop my rise to becoming a true symbol of peace. Nezu and the fifth judge nodded, respecting the teen's wishes. We understand, Nezu said. I think it goes without saying that you can expect an invite to my company's office and research facility after the sports festival during internships, the fifth judge told Izuku. He smiled confidently at Izuku. You'll have a bright future. Izuku in return slowly smiled sincerely, able to at least rest easy knowing that the fifth judge was speaking the truth. Thank you so much, Mr. Ishigami-senku, sir. A building in a secluded area. Check. A building that looks like something illegal is going on inside. Check. Armed men outside with suppressor attachments on their assault rifles and also on their sniper rifles and pistols. Check. And double check since they also have laser pointers on their snipers. This place reeks of a video game being set up. But life felt like a game every moment. That's what Tamura Shigaraki thought when he observed the warehouse, that a little expedition group that the League of Villains put together upon learning from Izuku about a potential worthy and useful candidate for the League were staking out. Tamura looked at Izuku, the boy in his villain attire, at his insistence of coming along on this mission, though he wore a full face mask that made him look like a true blue criminal. Izuku was staring intently at the warehouse, his eyes set on the target. The other members on this quest included Stain, who Izuku asked to come along due to the man they were after being a follower of Stain and wanted extra support in recruiting him. Toga, who wanted some more blood and wanted to meet the new recruit that caught Izuku's eyes, and probably because she was growing overly obsessed with Izuku as each day went on that Tamura suspected she was becoming a Yandere, and God knows how that would affect Izuku. Mr. Compress, for swift takedowns, as they were trying to do this as quietly as possible per Izuku's request, and Compress was a great candidate for this. And then Overhaul, the Yakuza punk that Izuku asked to come along so they could build camaraderie with him. A 6-man team, taking down a large group of goons. So many things could go wrong, and yet this felt like it would go smoothly. Alright, Izuku began as he gathered everyone's attention, before his nano-s formed a sniper rifle. Tamura still would never get used to how Izuku made life more like a video game with each weapon he formed from those random bots he somehow made. It defied reality in every way. Let's begin the infiltration. Izuku pulled out a dart that would put anyone to sleep upon contact with the poison tip, and loaded it into the chamber before firing a silent shot at a guard, which knocked them out. Tamura would never get used to Izuku's way of defying reality. Izuku was amazed he managed to perfect the add-on to his gloves and the soles of his shoes so he could essentially stick to walls now. And if he was feeling bold enough, he could run on walls. But that didn't change the fact they were infiltrating a heavily armed facility. And while run by villains, that could just as easily result in the target getting killed if they slipped up anywhere. This was a literal life or death scenario, and the first real one where Izuku was on his own. He couldn't afford to screw up anywhere on this mission. In the back was where the stairs to the basement were, and the basement was huge from what the blueprints offered. Izuku entered from the east side of the building, meaning he was mostly on his own until everyone cleared out their sections of criminals. Izuku dropped from the ceiling and onto a large steel container, which made Izuku wonder what was being transported into these warehouses. Didn't help that the building was about the size of a museum. And it didn't help anymore that they had additional snipers inside the building. They needed to go first. Izuku used his nano-S to turn camouflage, and began to use his nano-S to make him fly. It was a nerve-wracking process, but he managed to stick to a wall close to a sniper before putting them to sleep with a small dose of sleeping gas produced by some more of his nano-S. The guard almost fell over the railings, but Izuku managed to catch him, and then lay him down so it looked like he fell asleep on the job. The guard already looked tired, so it fit with the way he was taken out. The young villain looked around for any other guards he could take out in this section of the building, and saw two conversing while guarding a door that led to the rest of the building. He began to crawl on the wall towards them, and a thought entered his mind, and he inwardly sighed. I look like Spider-Man while doing this, don't I? He thought to himself. Izuku began to get off the wall when he saw a guard close to himself that was walking towards the guards he was after. Izuku quickly knocked the guard out with a chop to his neck, before laying him behind some crates so no one could find him, at least for now. Turning back to the guards, Izuku walked up to them while still invisible. He caught on with what they were saying. And the boss is sure that the new captive is who torched 7 of the heroes who worked for him, as well as our warehouse. One of the guards asked the other. Positive, and he fits the pill. His voice is just as raspy as it was on the phone before our warehouse was burnt down last week. The other answered. I was kinda hoping to get a dose of trigger. The Chinese stuff lasts for a while, and it would be perfect for seeing what I could do as a full-blown dragon. Now just the small wings and scales I get when I use my quirk without it. I hear ya. I was looking forward to the paycheck. I was finally gonna leave the country after we were all done and we could get our money. I wanted to go see my kids over in China. The first guard sighed. I just hope that I can get off scot-free, go see them in live like a normal citizen. I'm done with all of this criminal crap, to be honest. I bet. You never looked like the criminal type. And never really were the type either. I'm surprised you haven't killed yet either, or been killed by the boss for lying about what your quirk was. I don't want that feeling ever. The knowledge of ending someone else's life. That doesn't sit well with me. That, and what choice did I have? It was either this shitty job, or finding a way on the streets. Izuku was moved slightly by the first guard's determination to not kill and to go to his family. He then knocked out the second guard, disarmed guard A, and had a hand to his throat before slamming him into a wall, as well as uncloaking himself. You wish to roam free? Izuku asked, his voice scrambled by his mask. The guard was frightened but didn't fight back. How should the people here know that you didn't abandon them? That you won't betray them? The first guard began to speak up. Just want to see my family. And for what cost? I hate it here. This place is so biased towards quirkless people like me. I just wanted to go home to where none of that matters, and I can see my kids, quirkless just like me. The first guard looked at Izuku with a rage in his eyes and a look of sorrow as well while he loosened Izuku's grip. Or are you just another biased punk who couldn't care less about us quirkless? Izuku's eyes widened under his mask, before dropping the guard. Another quirkless? Izuku questioned. My apologies. I didn't mean to harm another one of my kind. The guard, breathing more raggedly, looked surprised at Izuku. What? It's not much, my brother. Besides, we are quirkless, Izuku answered. You should live your dreams. And you should go home too. Home to your family. Izuku looked around before finding a small case that had some yen in it. Enough for a flight. Convenient. Go home. No one will know what happened here. The guard was surprised before Izuku opened the door and went deeper into the rest of the building, before hearing the guard run quietly towards one of the exits. Izuku was glad he saved one of his quirkless family. They all deserved to live how they pleased. Whatever repercussions came would in the end be their fault. But he would help them in whatever way he could. It was also nice to see just how much he didn't care about the boss of this place. But for now, the expedition took priority. Izuku met up with the rest of the league at the door that would lead to the basement, where the man they were after was being held. They were all taking a break to make sure that they were all prepared. Izuku looked around at everyone before walking up to Shigaraki and Overhaul. Hey, how was your sector? The young villain asked. Shigaraki smirked. They were just a bunch of low-level goons. Nothing we couldn't handle. Overhaul looked agitated. They are all infected with that damn disease. And this place is dirty. He began to itch at a dark, slightly red spot on his jacket. It's disgusting. We'll be out of here soon enough, Overhaul, Izuku replied. Thanks again for coming here to assist us. You need manpower. And you want to build trust, Overhaul responded. And out of everyone here, I can at least trust you, since you're not infected with the disease. Fair enough, Izuku said. I dare say that we should begin our final approach, Mr. Compress said to everyone in the league who was present, with everyone nodding. He then placed his hand on the door and turned it into a marble, with a set of stairs leading down to the basement before them. They began to descend the stairs when they saw a much larger than anticipated room that held multiple cells that were clearly built as add-ons, not a part of the schematics of the underground area. There were roughly 36 men here, and each of them seemed ready for the League as they looked on at the League of Villains. Kill them, men. The leader of this group, a man with a quirk that made him a fire lizard man, judging by his hair that was on fire and his reptilian appearance, called out to the other criminals as they all charged forward, ready to kill. Izuku sighed and began to roll his shoulder before moving forward and punching one of the men with a force palm and sending them flying into the others, before he used his air slice to block an incoming attack by a man with a fire sword. A lot of fire quirks here, Izuku noted. You're all gonna die. Altus will destroy you all, if you ever make it out of here alive, that is. The flaming swordsman shouted at Izuku, before Stain threw a knife and hit the man in the head, killing him effectively. Whoever this Atlas person is, it doesn't matter who he is since we're not some average everyday petty criminals, Stain retorted before killing another man by decapitating them. We're the League of Villains, the ones who will reform all of society and wake them up to the truth. I wonder if you ever gave speeches. Stain, Compress wondered as he took a person's torso, the rest of the limbs falling to the ground, the man now dead from the loss of his torso. You sound like someone who'd be interested in politics. Stain grunted before impaling someone's heart with his katana. My dream to be a hero was all I cared about. Then followed by waking everyone up from the fact heroes only care about money. He pulled his sword out of the corpse and stabbed someone through their head with his knife from under their chin. Fame. He threw the second corpse into another flame quirk user, causing them to fall to the ground, before stomping on their head with his spiked shoe and impaling their brain after penetrating their skull. And power. Mr. Staney is so amazing. Toga called out with a psychotic look and blush on her face. Suddenly she disappeared and 2 people were killed as their throats were slit and she reappeared behind them. I want your blood, Staney. Save it for later, Shigaraki told Toga as another body was turned to dust. We're in the middle of a mission. During this commotion, Izuku went to find the target and opened a door that had a heavy lock on it after breaking said lock with a well-aimed sword strike, and saw the exact target they were after, albeit he looked tired, bloody, chained up, and was somehow asleep through the whole racket that they were causing. Hey, wake up, Izuku called out to him. The man woke up with a start, before Izuku cut him out of his prison. Who the hell are you? The man with scars all over his body asked. A true hero, Izuku replied. I am Deku, and I am one of few who will wake society up to the truth. The man simply chuckled. Well, aren't I lucky to have met you, Deku? He stood up very weakly, his knees shaking and his hand on the wall to stop himself from falling over. Crap, I'm lightheaded. Deku walked to him and put an arm over his shoulder to help guide him out of the cell. What is your name? The man smirked weakly. I go by Dabai. Well, Dabai, we're the League of Villains. The name is tacky, yes, but we're professionals. We also have Stain as an asset, Deku told Dabai. Stain? The hero killer, Stain? Dabai questioned. Stain looked up at Deku and Dabai. Are you the one killing the false heroes, the ones who are quote-unquote filthy stains? Dabai's eyes widened as he saw Stain. Yes, was all Dabai could say. You truly are a real hero, Stain said, before ending a man's suffering by stabbing them through the heart. Again, all of the opposing villains were now killed, and everyone could finally regroup. So, you're the new recruit Deku had an eye on, Shigaraki commented. You look like you've been through your fair share of struggles. You don't know even half of it, Dabai replied, as he began to stand on his own, Deku leaving his side. I'm Dabai. That'll do for now, Shigaraki replied. We came out here to recruit you by Deku's request. You could be of great use to us. I'll be the judge of that, Stain said as he walked up to Dabai and looked him in the eyes. Tell me, what drove you to be a hero killer? My scars, Dabai answered. Even I know that no real heroes exist. I learned that the hard way at a young age. He showed them his arms, but was showing where his arms were stabled specifically. I feel dead on the inside and on the outside. Might as well work my way towards destroying the biggest fake of them all. Your conviction is getting revenge, but at the same time, you're helping society by getting rid of the filth that plagues it, Stain summarized. At this, Stain nodded. I believe you are worthy. We wish to destroy society and rebuild it on the ashes, Overhaul told Dabai. We've all been wronged one way. My memory is hazy, but I killed my family, who didn't even remotely help me against the abuse I suffered from my father, Shigaraki said. I was told to live my life without blood. When that's what makes me whole, Toga told Dabai. My parents only kept me around because they didn't want me to sully their name. My grandfather was a great thief, but my family was targeted because of that relation and no one would try to say otherwise. We were all labeled as thieves when something went missing at a place we went to, so I decided to carry on a legacy. Compress stated. I was orphaned, and I see that this world is plagued by the quirks, Overhaul said. I'm going to break society and restore power to the Yakuza, who is the family that raised me and I owe my life to. I was told by my idol I couldn't be a hero. All because I was quirkless, Deku told Dabai. And before that, I was beaten by my classmates who all bore quirks. The teachers did nothing to help me and everyone knew and was in on it. Deku rolled up one of his outfit's sleeves to show the burns he had from Bakugo. I was even told to commit suicide. Deku rolled it back down. I keep them as a reminder of how I will break society piece by piece, starting with the system. And the first part of that is to kill All Might, which we are certainly capable of. He looked at Dabai, who looked sympathetic towards him due to the fact they both had scars that discolored their skin. Join us, Deku told him. We'll destroy society together, once and for. Deku was interrupted as a villain appeared out of nowhere and rushed at him, and Deku tried to leap away from the mysterious villain but was touched by them and disappeared. Everyone was shocked by this sudden development, before Stain regained himself and cut off the villain's hands and slammed him to the ground. Where is Deku? Gone, the villain said. Gone to another world. What? Toga exclaimed. My quirk sends people to places. They claim to go to other worlds while others disappear and reappear at locations. The villain began to laugh. Overhaul. Mind fixing his hands so he just has 2 stubs and won't bleed out. We should take him with us in case his quirk strands Izuku at some random dimension. Compress asked the Yakuza villain, who simply groaned. I hate these diseased victims. Overhaul muttered. Where was he? Izuku looked around in the back alley, frantically trying to figure out where he was. His Nano-S suddenly went offline, and he was left with just the ones on his person, which were still a lot. He couldn't connect to the internet yet either. Looking around, he exited the alleyway, before taking off the disguise he wore, which was his villain costume that was made purely from Nano-S. It was at least a good thing that he could control the ones with him, but Izuku wasn't connected to the other ones. He sighed, and decided to look around for any clues as to where he was. As Izuku walked around, he noted how there weren't any people with mutations from their quirks, but he noted that he was still in Japan. In fact, it felt beyond peaceful here. Though heroes were patrolling the streets, no one was talking about a villain attack, and everyone seemed to just be acting like normal, quirkless people. Holy crap, they were acting like quirkless people. Disturbed by this, Izuku entered a free Wi-Fi cafe and ordered a coffee so he could use the caffeine to at least influence his rational side. What do I look up first? Izuku wondered, before deciding to do a basic search and typed in All Might. He was startled by the results. Toshinori Yagi, more commonly known as All Might, is the former #1 hero, the 8th user of the One for All quirk, and one of the 2 deuteragonists, alongside Katsuki Bakugo, of the My Hero Academia anime, manga series, and the overarching protagonist of its spin-off My Hero Academia, Vigilantes. Izuku read to himself. That can't be right. But it was. Each name he entered he got some result. Himiko Toga, Tamura Shigaraki, Tenko Shimura, Dabai, Stain, Mr. Compress, Overhaul, All for One, Izuku Midoriya, Deku. It was here that Izuku realized a painful truth, one he had to accept in the world of possibilities, but also as something he couldn't understand, nor want to understand. He was meant to be a hero. He's a spin-off character. He's not real. Other reality. He left in a stupor, and went back to the ally from whence he came, and he sat in a corner and tried to make sense of everything. Everything. For starters, My Hero Academia. That's the series he would be from, assuming he's not delusional or something. He was meant to be a hero too, and inherit All Might's quirk, One for All. That alone made him want to puke. After what happened to him in his world, how the hell was he so gullible to accept it? After doing some thinking on that, Izuku came to the conclusion that he was probably at his lowest when All Might came to him. Izuku sighed, before pulling out his phone and beginning to look through the pages he kept to review. He found the page, and found that he accepted One for All the day of the sludge villain attack, but that he trained for 10 months before actually getting it, which made a bit of sense. If a scrawny version of him just had a quirk that granted immense super everything, then he would probably just explode upon using it at first, and there wouldn't be a need to train. However, another thing came up. In this canon, though Izuku hated to call it that, he didn't have the burns from Bakugo, though it was made clear he was assaulted by Bakugo and his lackeys more than once, and throughout his life too. But the question was, why didn't he have his burns? Bakugo was a merciless prick. There are so many unknown variables, Izuku said to himself, frustrated with what little sense this world made. How the hell does this even work? Izuku stood up and with the little Nano-S that he did have, he made a punching bag and delivered a barrage of punches to try and relieve himself of some stress. Solely because he needed to. He went over what he knew again. It all comes down to the butterfly effect. The butterfly effect was the only explanation to Izuku, as there was one thing that could change drastically. It either took place with Izuku's uncle, or somewhere within Izuku's whole life, maybe even Bakugo's. In his world, he knew All for One, and the formidable ancient evil was his uncle. However, the canon Izuku never heard of All for One until All Might mentioned him, which goes to show All for One is a key factor in these different realities. Deciding to move on, Izuku reviewed what other information he gathered. He shouldn't have met any of the League until the USJ attack, which was something that he knew Shigaraki was planning slowly but needed recruits for. The attack on the summer training camp that was apparently gonna happen in the summer of this year. And also throughout the many dates of random bullshit encounters, which goes to show they were different worlds entirely, which made Izuku wonder if him meeting everyone was a coincidence or fate. The young villain also reviewed some knowledge he gathered on his teammates he didn't know before. Chisaki felt like he owed his life to the boss of the Hasekai because he took the germaphobe in when he was young. Shigaraki was the grandson of All Might's predecessor, and had killed most of his family by accident except for his father. Stain was a vigilante at one point before becoming who he was now. And Dabai, the recruit they were after. Oh boy, this would be golden if it were all true. Sadly, it seemed like it was. He learned a lot about everyone, and their stories, and they all coincided with what My Hero Academia said about each and every one of them. Izuku also felt as though he was intruding on their privacy, in which case, he was going to need to apologize to everyone later. And then his priorities returned as he realized what he needed to do now. Shit, I need to find a way back, Izuku said as he looked around. This was where he came in. He eventually found a sort of gap in reality, in which it was a part that seemed to be distorted. He saw his exit and noted it so he could come back to it in a moment. Izuku wanted everything he could gather for now, and possibly even more. Just what were other versions of him like? After a few more hours, he got everything he wanted to know. Izuku felt somewhat pleased and downright fucking concerned as to what the hell he's seen. He expected drugs. He expected him with a quirk. He expected maybe some other things based off of animes, or games, even TV shows or cartoons. But Lord tell him, why the fuck do people write romance with him? It made him scared for how the multiverse viewed him. He also saw how titles mattered to each and every single version of him. It's just like how they separated them all apart, though it was mainly story titles since the best he could find for other versions of himself were in fanfiction. It was weird reading about himself, but it paid off. He was going to change the world with what he knew. Then he thought about it further, and frowned. I can't do that, he said to himself. If I were to just suddenly speak to everyone like I know what they were going to, or how they were going to act, then I would raise suspicion. I need to play dumb. I need to act like I don't know anyone from UA when I go. Izuku thought further, and then realized, however, if I do make equipment for the hero course students, I could make stuff that would assist them in the field immensely. It'd be easier for some, but I can still help the others. Izuku hummed. Now, the matters come down to the plans with the League. Assuming we play everything out according to that little manga story, and everything else, I'll need to figure out if it's true. Am I just some fictional character? It's a possibility, so I can't just cross anything out yet. Izuku then realized something again. Wait, who is gonna help that Uraraka girl at the entrance exam at UA if I'm not there? He went silent, before looking at the distortion. For both our sakes, you better work distortion. And let's hope you actually take me to the exam site. Today was the day of the UA Hero Course entrance exams, though general education and the business courses were also having their entrance exams too. But he hoped he didn't get anyone killed because he took a different path. Izuku exited the distortion and promptly wanted to throw up. His stomach already twisted from the ride through dimensions if that really was an alternate world. He was in an alleyway of sorts, but there was nothing in it, minus chunks of concrete wall that might have fallen from the buildings around them. And so far, he looked around to see masses of destroyed robots that littered the ground in every direction. Damn, he really was a protagonist. So, fate is rigged in my favor, Izuku commented as he observed the sight. I guess mostly everything checks out. Help. He heard a feeble cry for help, and after putting on his full mask and then also a hood using his nano-S, he leaned out of the alley to see exactly what he expected to find. Achako Uraraka, unable to use her quirk due to backlash, and stop analyzing and move. It turns out everything was correct, as well as the giant robot that UA had in these exams, which also made Izuku wonder why the hell hasn't UA gotten sued yet. They could kill the examinees. Izuku's body and mind reacted to save her, solely because no one was gonna die on his watch, and he used his nanos to form a large sword that the robot would consider a butter knife at least, before he jumped through the air right in front of the robot by using compressed kinetic energy stored in some of his nano-S to launch him. Begone, Izuku muttered as he plunged the sword through the robot's exoskeleton. He wasn't shocked that he pierced it, but it was definitely a reality check on how fragile these robots were. And then he remembered where he was, and cursed silently. Hopefully UA didn't notice who he was. If they saw his nano-S making the sword, then that would be a problem. Why did the wind keep getting in his fa? Right, he's falling through the air. Shit, and I was worried about my identity. The young villain thought to himself as he continued to freefall through the air. However, if I maneuver correctly, I should. He received a slap to the face before he went flying for a moment to his right, and hovered in the air for a moment. Izuku then looked to see the gravity girl, Uraraka, hovering in the air on top of a destroyed robot. Izuku inwardly sighed. Plot is on her side too. Isn't not important here, Izuku. Our release, Uraraka weakly said as she brought her hands together and Izuku fell back to the ground, but at least he was able to land safely. She landed a few seconds later, the robot she was on crashing into the ground. Presumably, the sudden impact to her stomach as well as her quirk's drawback made her vomit her lunch. After dusting himself off, he walked over to her and flipped her onto her back. Stay awake. It's not wise to fall unconscious on the field of battle, he told her, while his voice became distorted due to his mask. Who are you? Uraraka asked. One of your society's villains, though I prefer the term anti-hero or vigilante, Izuku replied, before seeing the damage she sustained. A couple of bruises here and there, and she probably twisted her ankle too. HMPH. They call villains evil and dangerous, yet society is willing to have their children attempt exams so dangerous they almost die. Makes you wonder. He pulled out a syringe. Who really are the criminals of this world? He held her hand to steady her arm. Hold still. Wait, she began to say, scared that she was about to be drugged and kidnapped if he really was a criminal, before Izuku injected her with whatever was in the needle. She wanted to throw up again, but suddenly the feeling disappeared, although it was followed with the throbbing pain that came in several locations of her body as she was healed. I recommend not doing anything extreme for a couple days, as well as making sure you actually eat well, Izuku stated as he pocketed his syringe, while President Mike announced the exams were over. Izuku merely scoffed. Time to leave. He walked over and picked up the sword, after commanding his nano-S to shrink so the sword was a more wieldable size. Why heal me? He heard Uraraka ask. Who even are you? Criminals and villains are groomed by society to appear as evil and deranged, as well as cold-hearted murderers, Izuku began to explain. While not entirely incorrect, some of us do what we need to in order to survive in this hellish society. Izuku turned to face her. Our world is a suppressive one. And because of that, as well as the biased opinions of the masses, the people your world labels as villains don't get the help they need in order to fit in with the usual crowd, or aren't accepted because they look different or funny, before they even resort to villainy because that's the only other option they have, because the world gave us the massive middle finger and told us to roll over in a ditch and die. Why did I heal you, you ask? Izuku chuckled. Because even though I've gotten people killed, even though I do the same illegal things as hundreds of others, even though you never asked, I did it because I saw someone in pain that no one would try to help until someone with the right quirk arrived. Izuku turned around. As to who I am, well, for starters, I'm Deku. I'm going to be the Goman of this society, and make sure the people are cared for, especially the ones you heroes will overlook, like you always do. He turned to look at her a final time. I just hope you take what I said here to heart. And don't become obsessed with the materialistic items this society advertises with the job of hero, and that you'll come to understand how this society is suppressive, as well as oppressive to others who aren't the ideal citizen. He waved goodbye for some odd reason, before flying off while using his nano-S again, this time making them hold him and hover away, before eventually cloaking himself so he became invisible. Recover Girl arrived a few moments later to help her, as the healer amongst UAS staff thought she might have needed help. Hello there, dearie, are you injured or anything? She asked. Achako remained silent as she looked towards where Deku just was. Are villains really all that evil? She asked, not really registering that Recovery Girl was there. Return. Izuku entered the bar while cloaked still, and he entered through a window which would lead to his own room ironically enough. However, the one thing that ultimately made a difference was the shouting coming from the actual bar area, and the shouting seemed to be coming from Shigaraki. Curious as to why the villain leader was angry, Izuku went downstairs. He heard some of the commotion while walking downstairs, and heard Toga say, Tamura, let me cut him up and make him talk. I'll gladly do the honors first, Tamura responded. This bastard is going to get what's coming to him. Izuku peeked into the room and saw that they had that one villain from Mission tied to a chair, and were torturing him right now. He was heavily hurt, and everyone emitted the aura of hatred towards the one villain, all except for Dabai, since he had the least of a bond with Izuku. Now tell us how to bring Deku back, or I'll break your arm, Tamura said after punching the villain in the face. I can't. He'll have to come back on his own, the villain said, before Izuku smirked. The villain didn't even know he was back. So, using the unfair advantage of silence, he slowly crept into the room using his invisibility and snuck up behind everyone. As they started to fight over what Izuku was gonna do, Izuku smiled as he sat down and uncloaked himself. Izuku looked at Kurogiri who was behind the counter. Can I get a soda? Izuku asked. Yeah, Izuku, Kurogiri said before pulling out a Sprite and giving it to Izuku. Can't believe how they're all acting like animals. I know. I can't believe I'm this important to everyone, Izuku commented. Yeah, Kurogiri replied. "Hey Izuku," everyone said to Izuku, who was still wearing his villain suit. After a few moments of processing, everyone looked at Izuku. "Izuku." They all rushed to look at him and make sure he was okay and uninjured. "He just appeared," Gentle said. "Truly, that's amazing. What happened to you?" Toga asked. "Where did you go?" Izuku merely smiled at Toga's questions and everyone else's reactions. However, there was something he wanted to do first. This man's dimension quirk was a bit dangerous, and it also interested Izuku. And such, he wanted this quirk available for his own uses. So as Izuku began talking with everyone, little did they know that he had made an experimental vial that he cloaked with his nano-S so he could take the quirk straight from the villain, and no one would know. Dabai just sort of stared at Izuku, not sure what to really say since he barely knew the kid. All he really knew was that he seemed to have some sort of power to make invisible weapons, and that Stain accepted this kid as a successor of sorts. He held them together as well. Dabai smirked at that thought. One kid held them all together. That's a bit childish. Izuku went home later and was eating dinner with his mom. "Izuku, I'm so happy you managed to make new friends and are spending so much time with them," Inko said to her only son with a smile and a bit of tears. Izuku smiled back at his mom. "Of course, considering they aren't quirkless towards me, it only makes sense to try and spend some time with them and also try to get to know them better. I've been making a lot of new ones lately too. I made one earlier today while hanging out with Tamura as well." Izuku referred to Shigaraki via his first name since if she learned that he was hanging out with villains, there would be a bit of problems. Plus, Toga's name was also known to the public since she was a serial killer. Things wouldn't end well for sure if she were to learn he hung out with killers. "Perhaps I could meet them someday," Inko asked, and Izuku continued eating and showed no signs of being panicked despite his internal panic and the fact that he wasn't sure if it was possible. But she could possibly see them. It would prove to be a good alibi if she knew. But if the events of the Camino Ward incident play out as told in that other world, he couldn't let her. It's a risky gamble. "Sure, Mom," Izuku said to her with a smile, relaxing a bit. "I'll have to ask when a good time to meet up is. Maybe once you get your UA acceptance letter," Inko said, since they never got an official letter for Izuku to enter UA. Izuku nodded, thinking that that would be a great idea. After having dinner, Izuku went to his room for the night, and since he was alone, Izuku began to think back to that other world, the one where he's just a figment of someone's imagination. He may have been overthinking this, but if this is to be believed, then that means that he's an offspring of an action taken differently than the one in that world. It was hard to confirm anything with so little information. If he really wanted to confirm this other world theory, then he needed to wait until something major happened. The first thing would be Tamura's raid on the USJ. Izuku thought, if nothing bad happened, then Kendo would be fine, and so would her class. But Izuku went back through his phone and began to write the information he had down, before slowly beginning to piece together a puzzle from scratch, and prepping for maybe one of the biggest plans he'll have made out of any plan he's made yet, even incorporating his plan of taking over Japan and finally ending suppression and getting people the help they needed. Planning every step and action like a game of chess, Izuku looked through what he knew about everyone he gathered information on. He started with 1A. To him, this class was the most important class out of them all. But that was also with him there. But assuming the position is empty, which it will be, then that's his target destination. 1B still needed to be looked after though, since they had some strong fighters as well. They had a lot of potential, as did Class 1A. And since he also planned to be a part of training them, he wanted to try and test and see what would work for each of them, and what would realistically work for all of them. How to make their quirks evolve, and become stronger without the use of drugs. That would be his goal. Support items in certain areas too. He could help them live, while making them his great enemies. He could slowly shape them into real heroes that inspire people to live their lives towards saving people not for their own self-gain, but because they're real heroes. A few people he'd need to help especially would need to be a minor reminder and a Nido Monoma, but each plan has a process. As he did research, a doable amount of hacking, and finally implementing his plan fully, he stopped and sighed. He checked the time, before realizing it was already morning. Izuku was surprised that he spent the whole night awake and finished making some plans. At least he didn't have to do anything important today. Small party. Izuku already knew his spot in UA was guaranteed. But still, he was surprised when he got his letter and was officially graded by Nezu for what the principal liked about his nano-S. Izuku finally felt like he was getting the praise he wanted from society. And not to mention, he was heading to UA to begin his plan to destroy All Might and expose him for his lies. Izuku had walked out of his room, where he opened the letter, when he saw his mother standing there and looked ready to bawl her eyes out. Right, she heard everything. My baby boy is heading to UA. Inko finally said, unable to hold her tears in anymore, and just outright hugged Izuku. Izuku smiled at her and hugged her back. We need to have a party for you now. Mom, I don't need a party, Izuku said. Izuku, if I'm right, you're the first quirkless student to make it into UA, Inko told him, reminding him of that fact. That's a cause for celebration. Inko let go of him and started fretting about. God, I don't know who to invite. We could always just invite over Kuro-sensei, Izuku said. That's a great idea, Izuku, Inko said. We could go to your dojo and hand out invitations there. Inko smiled at him, before he realized this wasn't just gonna be a quiet party either. You should also invite your friends over as well. You've been hanging out with them so much that it's time I finally got to meet them. Izuku nodded at that, not trying to make a big deal out of it. It wasn't like Izuku's villain friends were obviously villains. They weren't that popular yet. The more he thought about it, the more he realized how weird of a group his team was, and how most of them were older than him. He's going to need to be really convincing during this party. Damn, what did he get himself into? The party took place back at the fighting ring from when Izuku won the small fighting tournament. But really it was a loss since he won via forfeit, and that was Kendo's forfeit too. It pissed him off to this day, but he's moved past it. She didn't want to cause him more pain than necessary. And Izuku, well, he'd grown to accept that she was just a naturally caring person. He had become great friends with her as well. The party itself was small, just a little gathering for family and trusted individuals. Family was small for the two Midoriyas since it was just Izuku and Inko, but there were some other people here. For starters, Kuro had been one of the people to come since he trained Izuku, and Izuku wanted him at the party. In fact, it was Kuro who had managed to rent the fighting ring for the party, at least for today. Kendo's father, along with Itsuka herself, were also here at the party, so it was a party celebrating both Kendo's and Izuku's places in UA. Truth be told, their family came over, so it was Itsuka and her two parents. Other than the two dojo leaders and Kendo's family, a few students from their dojos also came over as well. It was a handful, but still, it was more than Izuku had expected. The only people who were missing were Izuku's friends from the league, but Izuku wasn't focusing on them right now. He was focused on Kendo, who he was actually currently talking with as they caught up a bit. And then after the 0-pointer showed up, Kendo said as she told Izuku about her experience in the practical exam, I was retreating since I knew I couldn't even hope to scratch that thing. It would have been suicide if I ran after it. However, a few of the other examinees got trapped in a building because of some rubble, and they couldn't destroy any of it due to the overuse of their quirks. I had to get them out while the 0-pointer closed in. I managed to get them out in time, before we heard a large explosion coming from another area. Kendo sighed. The exams ended soon after, but I wondered what in the world happened that day. Anyone who wasn't severely injured was ordered to go home once we changed back into our uniforms and got our belongings. It sounded like something happened in the other area though. I see, Izuku said, having a vague idea of what the explosion from that day was. I don't think anyone died. Otherwise we'd have heard about it on the news about a potential lawsuit from UA. He sighed. Seriously though, the exam just seems so biased. Without a strong quirk, you have nearly zero chance of getting into UA's hero course. The better approach would be to apply for the general education course and hope to transfer to the hero course via the sports festival, in which anyone has 3 chances to prove they could enter the hero course. Kendo blinked for a moment, before smiling a bit and nodding. Yeah, I guess you're right, she said, before crossing her arms and looking at him with a knowing smirk. That's what you plan to do, yeah? Izuku nodded. He looked at his right hand as he held it open in front of him. I plan on breaking the bias and showing the world what a quirkless person like me can do. Well, since you have a good teacher, Kendo began, as well as a good sparring partner, I think you could very well get into the hero course. Plus, you got those invisible swords you can just pull out of nowhere, and that chimera tail thing you used to temporarily paralyze me. I'd say you'd get into the hero course easily. She hummed a bit, before she asked him, how did you even think of that air slice of yours? Izuku wasn't all too sure himself if he were being honest. He was just focusing on the feeling of holding a sword in his hand while trying to remember the basic swinging motions taught to him by Stain. When he suddenly cut a refrigerator in half. I'm not too certain, actually. Perhaps it's just a divine gift. It was meant to be a joke, and it made Kendo laugh a little bit. Yeah, sounds about right. You're the exact person who'd probably receive divine blessing from the gods. She smiled at Izuku. I wonder which god gave you that gift then? Who cares? Izuku said to her. It doesn't matter who gave it to me. It was the fact that they gave it to me in the first place that matters. I was chosen for something. And who knows? He stood up and walked backwards and looked at her with a smile. Perhaps I was burdened with a glorious purpose. This caused Kendo to laugh a little bit more, with Izuku laughing a bit with her. The door opened to the room, before a voice asked, Are we a bit late to the party? Izuku turned to look, before seeing Gentle and La Brava, or Denjiro Tabita and Minami Eba. The third person with them, the one who spoke, was Compress, who Izuku barely recognized and recognized only because of his voice. Otherwise, Compress is known as Atsuhiro Sako. Other than that, Izuku was surprised to see how young Sako looked, since he's never seen him without the mask, but still, he was glad they showed up. Tabata was dressed to look like a teacher, and Minami was simply dressed casually. Sako was still dressed like a performer, which fit his nature and attitude. "Hey guys," Izuku said as he waved at them. Kuro and Keigo were on edge upon seeing them, but were immediately settled once Izuku claimed to know these three strangers. "It's been a while, Izuku. How have you been?" Tabito asked Izuku as they walked up to Izuku, with Sako pulling out a marble, snapping, and holding a small gift. "I've been doing quite well," Izuku said, before looking at Kendo. "Itsuka, I'd like you to meet Denjiro Tabita, Minami Aba, and Atsuhiro Sako." Izuku smiled, before looking at his villain comrades. "Likewise, I'd like you all to meet Itsuka Kendo." "It's a pleasure to meet you all," Kendo said to them as she stood up and offered them a handshake, one at a time. "It's a pleasure to meet you as well, Kendo," Tabita said with a smile as he shook her hand first. "Izuku has told us a lot about you. You're quite the fighter," he says. "Well, yeah," Kendo said with a nod. "I've been training since I was in elementary." "Quite a young age to train," Sako commented. "But, to be a hero, it only makes sense to train both your body and your mind. Isn't that what they try to teach most heroes, though?" Minami questioned. "Depends on the school," Tabita said. "Every school is different after all." Tabita put a hand on his chest. "Take it from a former hero student." Sako and Kendo next to him, along with a few others who were nearby, were a bit surprised by what Tabita said. "You were a former hero course student?" Kendo asked Tabita. "Alas, I was. But I got expelled for trying to save someone without a license, when there was no hero around either," Tabita said. "If I didn't try to save him though, the man most likely would have died from the refrigerator that would have fallen on top of him." Tabita sighed. "But it didn't matter since he still got injured and was put into a coma for 6 months. 6 months? Kendo was shocked at that. Geez. Kendo looked at him sympathetically. "I'm so sorry that happened to both you and that person." "It's old news," Tabita said. "I'm glad that I can still at least work. And there was a college that would accept me despite my failings. I am trying to make sure no one goes through the same misfortune I did." Truth be told, he didn't have a good life after he was expelled. Most of that was a lie. But Minami managed to hack a few places so he would be a teacher, at least for a short moment. "Still, I'm sorry you had to give up on your dream," Kendo said to him. "Likewise, my friend," Sako said to Tabita while patting him on the back. "When dreams are crushed, it never, ever sits well." Izuku couldn't help but feel like Compress was referring to him with that comment. Minami said, hugging Tabita. "We're here for you." The gentle criminal smiled at his friends. He was glad he had them with him. Izuku smirked at the scene, before suddenly he was hugged from behind and his eyes were covered by 2 hands. And the voice of Toga hummed, "Riddle me this. Who has yellow hair, great reflex, and is sneaky?" "Himiko," Izuku said with a smile, before Toga let go of him and stepped in front of him. "Ding ding ding," the blood-craving villain said with a smile as she stepped in front of him. "I made it before the celebration could kick off." "This another friend of yours, Izuku?" Kendo asked Izuku. Izuku nodded. "Itsuka, this is Himiko. Side note for times in the future, she likes blood because her quirk utilizes it so she can transform. She gets into a trance without it." Turning to Toga, Izuku said. "And Himiko, this is Itsuka. Please don't try anything with her." "I'm not gonna do anything. I already took some blood before coming here," Toga said. "But damn, who knew your theory about my quirk getting satisfied with animal blood was right?" "It was a logical conclusion," Izuku stated, with Kendo realizing just how deep of a connection he had with Himiko. "But, anyways, I thought Akaguro-sensei would be coming with you." "He was running a few errands before he could come here," Himiko said. "So I came here by myself since I was a bit impatient." "Training is gonna be harsh later," Izuku told her, before Himiko just waved it off, while Izuku rolled his eyes at her gesture. "Who's Akaguro-sensei?" Itsuka asked Izuku. "The one who taught me how to play with blades," Izuku stated, while suddenly pinching the air in front of him while his right hand held it, as if holding a katana by the hilt and running a hand along his own blade. Itsuka was on edge, and so were Izuku's villain friends since they didn't know what he'd do with a blade out. Even then, they felt like he had his nano-S with him. And he did. "Me and Himiko are learning how to use different blades with him," Izuku continued, before he dropped the sword and resumed the conversation while crossing his arms. "He's quite skilled, I'll be honest. MHM. And he has a quirk similar to mine, related to blood." Toga added to the information about him. "Luckily, he doesn't go through what I go through without blood for a long time." "Interesting," Itsuka said. She was learning a lot about Izuku outside of what she did know. But he hung with such an oddball group. It was hard not to think he was a part of something big, but she couldn't tell what it would be. "Maybe you could join us one day and learn the blade work," Izuku commented to Itsuka, who merely shook her head, not seeing how it'd be helpful to her. Maybe I'll come and watch, Itsuka said, turning down his offer. Izuku merely nodded at that, before they heard the door to the area open. Sorry, we're a bit late. I had something to take care of. Izuku looked to see one of his many illegal partners whose association would get him arrested. Kai Chisaki, the next leader of the Shy Hasekai, wearing a formal suit and a mask similar to what Izuku's seen him wear before. But, alongside him, was a little girl with white hair and red, timid and shy eyes, wearing a cute little dress and a timid and shy smile. On her forehead was a horn that was more off to the side than the center of her forehead. Izuku's eyes widened. Small party. Quite an interesting party, Chisaki commented as he looked around. Kai, Izuku said in greeting as he looked at the Yakuza member. Izuku, Chisaki replied. Iri looked at Izuku, a bit scared of him. She was still scared of Chisaki. And if Izuku knew him, then that meant he was probably someone to be scared of as well. Izuku, just how many people do you know that stand out like them? Itsuka asked Izuku, confused for many reasons. Being quirkless does wonders, Izuku said, his tone being a bit bitter from what everyone could tell. So many wonders, and a hint of sarcasm. Chisaki merely nodded. Anyways, I would like you to meet my adopted daughter/niece, Chisaki said. This is Iri. Hi. Iri greeted, a bit scared. Kendo noted how shy Iri was, and stepped forward a bit cautiously. Hi there Iri, I'm Itsuka Kendo. It's nice to meet you. Kendo held her hand out for a handshake. Iri was nervous and didn't take her hand. Go ahead, you need to be nice to people, Chisaki told Iri. Don't force yourself though. Izuku smiled at how much nicer he was towards Iri, since Izuku gave some advice to the Yakuza member. The girl still didn't take Kendo's hand, and shook her hand. I don't want to make you disappear, Iri mumbled out of fear. The people around were confused. Only Izuku and Chisaki knew why. This caused Chisaki to sigh. All right, Iri. He lightly patted the child on the head. I'm sorry about her. She's just shy and mentally scarred. These drew some concerned looks from everyone as the child maintained her distance from everyone. Izuku hummed as the party went on, and everyone casually talked and mingled with each other. He had also noted that Itsuka and Himiko were getting along pretty decently. Izuku, he heard his mother say, before he turned to look at her. She was smiling at him as she walked up to him. I'm so glad you have so many friends here, she said to him with an honest smile. Izuku couldn't help but smile back. He loved his mother a lot, and he was glad she didn't suspect a thing. He didn't like lying to her, but he knew it was a necessary evil. She wouldn't condone these actions of his. I'm glad I have this many as well, he admitted to her. It sucks being quirkless since that apparently defines how life works, Izuku told her, which made his mother sad upon hearing him say that. Izuku, she began, before Chisaki walked up to them. Excuse me, Chisaki said as he interrupted them. The two Midoriyas looked at Chisaki. I need a little help with Iri, Izuku, he said to the teen. Izuku nodded as he looked at his mom. I'm sorry, Mom. Give me a moment, he said as he went with the member of the Yakuza. As they got out of his mom's earshot, Izuku looked at Kai. What's wrong? I'm trying to help Iri calm down since she's getting a bit anxious. But I'm pretty sure that I'm not doing a good job at it, especially since she hates me, the Yakuza member admitted. It's a shame to even admit that the girl hates me. At least you can see that she hates you, Izuku said, which grew a small glare from Chisaki. What? It's a good thing you can see that. Now you just have to make her like you. Doesn't help the situation, Kai said to Izuku, a bit annoyed. Izuku shrugged it off as they approached Iri, who was sitting in a chair. She was sitting by herself, and was honestly looking very nervous, considering her background with little to almost no human interaction, especially after the death of her father. Izuku was surprised she didn't have a meltdown already, or perhaps a mental breakdown. Hi there, Iri-chan, Izuku said to Iri suddenly, scaring the child and making her look at him. She was scared of him, despite him looking like a kind person. My name is Izuku. Are you okay? He asked her. She shook her head, too shy to say a word. Izuku lightly hummed at that. From what he could tell, Iri had social anxiety. That, or she was too scared to even talk to another human being because of what happened with her mother. Will you talk with us if I give you something sweet? He asked her. Why yes, Iri said, still quite nervous and anxious. Izuku smiled at her, with Kai being utterly baffled by Izuku's deal with her. He was more baffled when Izuku pulled a candy apple out of nowhere and gave it to her. Iri seemed intrigued by the candy apple. If you make a mess with it, ask for a napkin, he said to her. Kai picked out some nice clothes for you, and I don't think we'd want to get them dirty. You wouldn't be able to change out of them until you go home, and we wouldn't want to wear dirty clothes during a party, right? Iri got a bit scared by Izuku's tone. Why yes, Izuku patted her on the head. SHH, calm down. I won't hurt you, and Kai won't either. He knows what will happen if he does, Izuku said to her, although Kai was confused by that. What in the world could Izuku mean by that? He had a no-killing policy. Iri was confused. She thought Izuku was friends with Kai, her caretaker. Just who was he? Izuku stood up and looked at Kai. You need to bond with her and treat her kindly like a good father would treat their daughter. What you're lacking is that emotional embrace since you're a germaphobe. You will need to do things yourself, which involves cleaning, playing with her, cooking for her personally, and perhaps buying her a few things. Izuku then wrote down a number for Kai to take. That is my mom's number. She can give you a few pointers on raising a child. How she could in turn help babysittery, Izuku said. He stretched a little. But she is your responsibility, which means you need to help her. Izuku began to walk away. You're acting like taking care of a kid is easy, Kai grumbled. And walking around is barely easy for me. Because unlike you, I actually have scars on my body, Izuku retorted. And they fucking burn. He walked off. Yuri looked at Izuku in awe, but still scared. Just what kind of person was he? Discussion. UA High School was easily one of the most prestigious schools in the hero business. It had cemented that as a fact the moment All Might had graduated from its halls and became the #1 hero in Japan. Alongside its other courses, including the business and support courses, it was easily one of the greatest schools in all of Japan, even regarded as one of the safest. Some of the teachers within UA were gathered in a conference room a day before the prestigious school would open its doors for the students to continue their careers. Eraserhead, Present Mike, Midnight, Vlad King, Snipe, Hound Dog, Power Loader, Cementos, and the newly hired All Might. But at the head of the conference table was none other than the principal of UA, Nezu. And he had a couple of words to share with the teachers. Good evening, everyone. Sorry to call you all here so late, Nezu said as he began to talk, grabbing everyone's attention. I was aware that Sekijiro had to take his dog to the vet, and that Ectoplasm had a dentist appointment, and also needed to get his new legs checked out for practical training. Hisashi commented, You know, for the hero course, right? Nezu said. As such, I will be informing you all on some changes and details about the new first years that will be enrolling here. Oh, Aizawa and Sekijiro were both intrigued by that, considering they were the teachers for the only 2 hero course classes within the first-year classes. Well, what's up? Sekijiro asked Nezu. Do we need to be mindful of certain students? On the contrary, all your students are perfectly fine, Nezu said. I did background research on them to double-check what their records say. None of them have any bad history you need to be mindful of. Then what's the issue? Aizawa questioned. Well, for starters, Shouta, your class will be missing a student, Nezu stated, which made Aizawa sit up slowly. After reviewing and picking out the most suitable candidates for heroism, we were left with an empty spot due to no other student passing the basic point criteria. Now, there was one additional person that caught my eye, but it didn't look like they were a student, and instead had accidentally found themselves in the middle of the exam. Actually, I noticed that, Nimuri said, having been the one to actually bring it up with Nezu himself. What was up with that? Why didn't the alarms go off either? The alarms only go off if a quirk was being used from the outside to enter, Nezu explained. I don't know how he did it myself, but the person just appeared within ground beta. Though maybe it was a bit of a blessing they did. Blessing? Snipe questioned, getting a bit worked up by that. You think some rando appearing from who knows where was a blessing? After reviewing the footage, that person saved the life of an Ochako Uraraka, Nezu said, getting Snipe to stand down. Playing said footage revealed the person wearing a suit, with a hood and a mask on. And it displayed the act of heroism that the person committed as they destroyed the zero-pointer with a large sword they somehow made materialize with a substance that seemed to come from their body. The person did indeed save Uraraka, and she in turn saved him. Interesting, Aizawa commented. The footage continued, and also showed Ochako getting healed by the person. They had medical equipment, or something like that. It definitely caught everyone's attention. As the scene progressed, it looked like the man and Uraraka were talking before the man disappeared. Does she know who that person was? Ryo asked Nezu. We conducted an investigation as well as monitored Uraraka's health for a few days, Nezu said. She didn't know who that person was, but they told her that they were what our society would call a villain, though they saw themselves as an anti-hero or vigilante. They compared themselves to Gomen from the late 1500 seconds, saying they would make sure people were cared for. The hell is that supposed to mean? Azashi asked, confused. It means that our Gomen here, who goes by the alias of Deku, is a victim of trauma and became a vigilante due to the way they see our society, Nezu stated. From Uraraka's testimony, it seems they became one because of the way people label others as villains because they don't get the help they need. Why should villains receive help? Snipe questioned, thinking the reason was stupid. The people were labeled before they became villains, is what I'm picking up, Nezu said. They were labeled by their nature, looks, and abilities before they truly walked down the path of no return. Nezu hummed for a moment. It should also be noted before we label Deku as a villain, that he hasn't explicitly attempted to harm people there. Well duh, he'd try to get away as soon as possible. This is UA, literally the greatest hero school in all of Japan, Vlad King commented. True that, Nezu said with a nod. Aizawa looked at Nezu from the corner of his eyes. Do we know any sort of crimes that Deku has committed? Not directly, but Uraraka mentioned in her testimony that they have gotten people killed, Nezu said. It's likely they're a weapons dealer, or perhaps an info broker. Regardless of which it is, she said they haven't mentioned they directly killed people. Instead, they help people who we, as heroes, overlook. Well, we can't all be All Might, Higari commented. And that is a fair point, Nezu said. I actually do have reasons to believe that Deku is somehow connected to the hero killer Stain. They caught everyone's attention as they looked at Nezu. Everyone here knew who Stain was. He always murdered heroes, mostly lesser-known ones that had fishy rumors going around about them, which tended to be true. Recently, his killing spree had sped up, and more people were dying. At the crime scene, evidence was actually left about the motives for murdering specific heroes. It was also clear how the heroes in question were quite selfish too. Despite that, the murder of another human being was unacceptable. No wonder Deku said that we'd likely call them a villain, Aizawa said. If they're in cahoots with Stain, he'd definitely be labeled one. In Uraraka's testimony, Deku told her not to cling to materialistic items that comes with being a pro-hero, Nezu said. Like the heroes Stain kills. It could be that Deku and Stain are a part of this small group I heard of one night on patrol, Aizawa commented. The society's rejected 4. Who are the other 2 members then? All Might asked. Don't know. It was just small villain banter, so it wasn't important, Aizawa said. Speaking of Uraraka, Ken said as he looked at Nezu. How is she? Luckily, she is 100% okay, Nezu informed the teachers. She was taking it easy so far from what I heard from her parents. In fact, the encounter with Deku seems to have strengthened her resolve for becoming a hero. A villain encouraging someone to become a hero, Hisashi said. That's unheard of. Yes, which is also why I want Shouta to keep an eye on her when classes start, Nezu told Aizawa, which made Aizawa simply nod. We don't know what happened to her other than a burst of healing, so we need to make sure that there aren't any long-term effects. Plus, I think she earned her spot in the hero course. Granted, Deku was a villain, but she did save him, who in turn saved her. I think it's only fair that she's accepted into UA. You confirmed that when you told me to keep an eye on her once classes start, Aizawa said. I did, Nezu said. Anything else? Hisashi asked. Actually, yes, and this more or less concerns Power Loader, Nezu said, which caused the rather scrawny hero to sit up nervously. Assuming next year there are 0 new students for the support course, we will be closing down the support course for the sake of focusing on the other 3 courses. Not a lot of students this year, Snipe asked. There are only 2, Nezu answered. I'll also bring this up now, since more than likely the students from the hero course will interact with them, but one of them is quirkless. This was a shock and surprise to all but Nezu. That's rare, Hisashi commented. You never see any quirkless kids around. Probably because this is the first quirkless student in all of UA history, Ken said, which made Hisashi's jaw drop. Well damn, Hisashi said. Precisely why I will not tolerate anyone being rude to him, solely because of his lack of a quirk, Nezu stated firmly, which showed that he was not messing around. This kid is a genius, but I also believe he is in dire need of therapy. Ryo, I would like to request that you monitor the kid's mental health in the coming days, as I will also make it known to him that I'm requesting he take therapy sessions with you. Giorararar. Understood, Ryo said. Not liking the fact that the kid would be walking into the school, traumatized, especially if the boy was a genius. A part of me wonders whether the kid has anything to do with those hate emails I found talking about a quirkless kid on a computer I found in the teacher's lounge, Snipe commented. We'll leave it at, I'm disgusted at some of our former backers for the support course who I terminated our contracts with, Nezu stated. Clearly Nezu held the quirkless kid in some sort of regard. By the way, what's the kid's name? Aizawa asked. Well, the 2 students of the support course are Mei Hatsune, she's the other student accepted into the support course, Nezu began, and also Izuku Midoriya, our quirkless student. He's even gotten Senku's approval. Everyone else seemed to accept that, but all might recognize that name. That was the name of the boy he wanted to give one for all too. He made it into UA. That boy made it. All Might thought, surprised. Maybe I can still give him one for all. For now, that will be all, Nezu said. Classes will resume like normal, and nothing else should really change or be different. The teachers all nodded and prepared to leave. However, Shouta, Ryo, I would like a word with you too. And All Might, would you mind waiting outside the room for a moment as well? This piqued the interest of the other teachers. What did Nezu want with these 3? Aizawa was most curious as to what Nezu wanted, especially since Hound Dog would be involved. All Might didn't quite know what Nezu wanted with him specifically, but was a bit worried. As the other teachers left, and All Might waited outside the conference room, Nezu looked at Aizawa and Ryo. Now, Ryo should already be made aware about the student's mental headspace, but one of your students isn't in the greatest of spots right now, Shouta. Aizawa wasn't too surprised, but he was still a little shocked. What's wrong with them? Well, young Bakugo attempted to commit suicide a few months ago, Nezu said. Right now, we have him on suicide watch, as well as going through therapy due to a couple of dark times in his life. Which is also why I want you to make sure he does not go near Midoriya, in fear that he'll freak out and have a mental breakdown. Considering Aizawa knew Izuku was quirkless, this came as a bit of a shock. What in the world did Midoriya do to Bakugo to cause this? He thought Izuku was the one who started it. Actually, it was Bakugo who started it, and was forced to go along with this, Nezu said. I'll send you the photos of the scars Bakugo has. Now, we're personally still investigating the attacker from this cold case alongside a couple of officers. But after doing some research on the area, people, teachers, and students, we're coming to the conclusion that a very old group that was extremely biased towards the quirkless may be the instigators here. So, Bakugo wanted out but was forced? Aizawa asked. He put the pieces together and his eyes dawned in realization. Oh, Bakugo has hurt Midoriya a lot, which is why I'm extending counseling to him as well, Nezu stated. Midoriya made it known back during the support course entrance exam that he harbors a deep hatred in him, one that could consume and do irrational things. Dangerous, irrational things. Nezu stood up in his seat. This is why I wish for Midoriya and Bakugo to not cross paths until we can get them both to be in the correct headspace for them to meet up and make amends. Aizawa understood. Right, this is a very complicated batch of students already, and one of them isn't even in my class, he thought to himself, dreading what the rest of his class was like. I would like you two to discuss options regarding when would be good for Bakugo go to Hound Dog, Nezu stated. Other than that, you two are dismissed. The teachers both bowed before leaving. As they left, Ryo opened the door and looked at Aizawa, saying, since I've given Bakugo some therapy already, let me show you the photos of his scars. All Might watched his co-workers leave, before entering the conference room, which had only Nezu left in it. Principal, All Might said. Toshinori, Nezu said, using All Might's true name. What did you wish to discuss with me? All Might asked. I had caught Shouta up to speed, so likewise I should also mention to you that Midoriya and Bakugo are not to make contact with each other until they both are mentally well, Nezu said. You personally have an interest in Midoriya, wanting to give him one for all. All Might nodded. Although it would be a good idea for you to catch up with the boy, I do want you to also be mindful of the boy's intensely buried anger. Anger? All Might questioned. Nezu nodded. Although I didn't talk much about it to Shouta and Ryo, the boy has this rage that is intimidating to the point it scared even me, and it wasn't even directed at me. Looking at All Might, he added, I know you have regret not being able to tell Midoriya on that day that you did think he could become a hero, but I think you should wait a bit before giving him one for all, or even offering it to him. The prospect of a quirk of its nature would surely set the boy off, especially after going most of the year believing his idol didn't think he could be a hero, only to suddenly learn said idol's quirk could be passed down to him. It could break someone, learning a harsh truth like that. All Might said with a small nod, looking down. He does intend on trying to enter the hero course though, through the sports festival, Nezu said. Perhaps after it would be a good idea to offer one for all to him. All Might merely nodded. I agree. You are dismissed, Nezu said to All Might. I hope you enjoy your time here at UA, Toshinori. With that, All Might left the conference room, feeling even more guilty about what he said to the boy. If the anger is all because of me, gosh, what have I done? All Might thought guiltily.